Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for attending this meeting of the Planning Committee, 20th of March 2025. My name's Caleb Tomlinson. I'm the chair of the committee and I'm also the ward member for Bamber West. Committee members and members of the public are reminded that this meeting is being streamed live to YouTube. If you're attending the meeting because you want to speak on an application and you have registered to do so, I will ask you to come to the table, press the speaker, introduce yourself, and then you have 4 minutes to make your representations. Voting will be undertaken by the electronic voting system, and the outcome of the vote will then be confirmed by our legal officer, Liz. I'll begin with some housekeeping. If you have mobile phones with you this evening, please put them on silent. We're not expecting a fire drill tonight, so if the alarm goes off, the emergency exits are to your rear and we will all meet on the car park. Okay, if I can now ask everyone to introduce themselves, beginning with the young lady on my left.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Walsh and I'm the Legal Services Regulatory Team Leader.
The Story, Democratic Service Officer.
Peter Gabbett, Councillor for Lostock Ward. That's the call.
Chris Lomax, Councillor for Whatley-Dale East.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Phil Smith and I represent New Longton and Hutton East.
Good evening, Councillor David Shaw representing Howick Priory in Penwortham.
Good evening, I'm Keith Martin. I'm a ward member for Middlefirth in Penwortham.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Peter Molyneux, Councillor for Samlesbury and Walton Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Hayden Williams, representing Leyland Central.
Good evening, Councillor Mary Green, representing Midge Hall and Moss Side.
Good evening, Councillor Elaine Stringfellow, representing Lostock Hall.
Good evening, Debbie Roberts, Development Management Team Leader, and beside me is Jessica Jarman, she's Planning Officer.
Good evening, Fiona Hope, Planning Officer.
Good evening, Chris Salby, Development Planning Team Leader.
Good evening, Lisa Mathewson, Senior Planning Officer.
Good evening, Catherine Thomas, Planning Manager.
Good evening, Elizabeth Hindle, Head of Planning and Enforcement.
Okay, thanks for that, everyone. Okay, I have had apologies for absence from Councillor Pillinger, and I'm very grateful to Councillor Keith Martin, who is substituting for him this evening. Item 3 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Catherine, do we have any? Oh, sorry. Declarations of interest. Ben, do we have any declarations? It's easy to mix the two of you up.
It's over to members if there is any to declare, Chair. I'm not aware of any so far.
Okay, thanks for that. Catherine, do we have appeals?
No, Chair, we haven't any appeal decisions received.
Okay, thanks for that. And I have read the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of February. I agree with them and I'm happy to sign. Councillor Smith, what are you happy to second?
I'm happy to second it, Chair. I have a feeling this meeting might take a bit longer than the last one. Thank you.
You never know. Right, okay, so can we go to the electronic vote on the minutes? If you weren't here, please remember to abstain. Thank you.
And those minutes have been approved.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Liz. Moving on to item number 6, land off Newgate Lane at Whitestake. Fiona, if you would like to present this item, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, this is an application in outline with the matters of access, scale and layout to be considered. The matters of appearance and landscaping would be reserved for later application. Following demolition of 2 barns, there is proposed the erection of 4 self-build or custom-build dwelling houses with or without garages and associated works, plus a new footpath in the adjacent field. Since the original submission, in response to officers' concerns, the scheme has been amended to reduce the number of proposed dwellings from 5 to 4 and to add the new footpath. The site is just under 0.5 hectares in size and is to the west of Newgate Lane. The access to the site is approximately 450 metres north of the junction of Newgate Lane and Chainhouse Lane in Whitestake. The irregular shape, as you can see outlined in red, shows the whole of the site for the proposed dwellings and the proposed footpath, which is to the south-east. These photos show the existing 2 units in the areas of hard standing on the site. Unit 1 is closer to Newgate Lane and is longer and narrower than Unit 2, which is at the rear and western side of the site. The existing access and the internal road, as shown on the 2 photos on the left-hand side of the screen, would remain in situ for the proposed dwellings. These former agricultural barns were granted planning permission at appeal in 2023 to change the use to storage and distribution purposes, together with the formation of hard standing, which is evident in the photographs there. What this means is that although the area is designated as Greenbelt, this site is accepted to be previously developed land or brownfield land as defined by the NPPF, and therefore residential development on this site is not considered to be an appropriate development in the Greenbelt, and if it would not cause substantial harm to the openness of the Greenbelt, this development would be supported by the NPPF. So this site plan shows the linear layout for 4 dwelling houses, each with adequate private amenity space and parking provision for more than 3 vehicles. The access road remains along the northern edge. There will be no impact to the existing hedgerows or trees. To enhance the biodiversity on site, a new native hedgerow of 215 metres is proposed along the western and southern boundaries, which would also provide a distinct barrier between the properties and the adjacent field to the south, and bird and bat boxes will be provided on each dwelling and in local trees. Plot 1 will be set back 42 metres from Newgate Lane, and the front elevations of plots 1 and 2 and also the front elevations of plots 3 and 4 would face each other with at least 23 metres in between them. The rear elevations of plots 2 and 3 would face each other with the required minimum 21 metres between the facing first floor habitable room windows, with the compliant turning head for emergency and refuge vehicles in between. So these overlay diagrams help to assess the impact to the openness of to the Greenbelt with the existing units shown hatched. For comparison, the cumulative footprint area of the 2 units, so not including the areas of hard standing, is 1,646 square metres, and the cumulative footprint of the proposed 4 dwellings is 783 square metres. The cumulative volume of the 2 units is 11,553 cubic metres, and the volume of the dwellings would be 5,090 cubic metres. So albeit the ridge height of the proposed dwellings will be between 1 to 2 metres higher than the existing units, and a slight change in footprint position of the built development compared to the units, the overall footprint area and volume of the dwellings will be under half of the existing buildings. There will be a significant reduction in the impact of massing and less impact on the openness and harm to the Greenbelt at this location with the proposed dwelling houses when compared to the existing units. These photos just show the existing access at the site and a view of Newgate Lane in both directions. And at this point, it is an unlit national speed limit applies single lane road with no footpath and ditches at either side. So this is an enlarged site plan to show what they're doing at the access point. So it would be lit and it would be wide enough for 2 cars to initially pass side by side to meet highway standards and expectations. So this site plan shows the proposed footpath beginning from the access road at the top to run internally along the field edge to link Newgate Lane further south next to Newgate Nurseries. Highways initially raised concerns with pedestrian safety along Newgate Lane at the site access going southwards towards other built development and existing footpath. They suggested that a pedestrian footpath be built as part of the proposed development. Rather than culvert the ditch for 70 metres and create a footpath along Newgate Lane itself, it was felt more reasonable to create the footpath along the eastern edge of the adjacent field, which is also within the ownership of the applicant. The footpath will be 2 metres wide with tarmac surface constructed to highway standards. And at the end of the footpath, there will be some tactile paving to warn pedestrians to use precaution when crossing the road to the other side to continue along the existing footpath at Newgate Lane. And there has been some history of some heavy traffic at this location with regards to the nurseries. A small section of hedgerow would need to be removed and a crossing over the ditch created, but any loss here will be mitigated by the new 215 metres hedgerow as mentioned earlier. Unlike the proposed housing on previously developed land, which the NPPF allows for, this footpath will be along the edge of an agricultural field, currently in arable use in the Greenbelt. And so it needs to be demonstrated that any harm to the Greenbelt caused by encroachment of this footpath into this field is outweighed by its benefits. Overall, it is felt that the new footpath would have minimal impact to the openness encroachment on the Greenbelt and would lead to an improvement to highway safety along this section of Newgate Lane for all users and forms part of the application for 4 new homes, which is an appropriate use of a brownfield site. So some photographs of where the footpath will be. So the top left photo demonstrates where the proposed footpath would exit onto Newgate Lane in between that evergreen tree and the speed limit sign. There will be no need to move the existing highway sign or the telegraph pole, which is set further into the field, as you can see on the top right photo. The top right photo also shows the existing footpath on the right-hand side of Newgate Lane, so pedestrians would cross over to this to continue any journey towards Jane House Lane. The bottom left photo shows the edge of the field with the hedgerows and trees, which would remain in situation, and the footpath would run adjacent to. The bottom right photo shows Newgate Lane going south, and the footpath will be on the other side of those trees on the right-hand side. Representations have been received both in support and objection to this application, as outlined in section 7 of the report. But please let me be clear, 28 of the 29 objections have come from the local community and 42 of the 45 in support have come from elsewhere in South Ribble and Chorley. An update sheet has been added since the agenda has been published with a further letter from an existing objector, but no new issues raised, and confirmation that all landowners support the application with the named applicant taking the lead. There are no objections from statutory consultees, including highways, and the application is recommended for approval, subject to the imposition of conditions as outlined in section 13 of the report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Fiona. We have Christine Furlong with us this evening. Good evening. So if you press the red button, introduce yourself, and then you have 4 minutes to make your representations, okay?
Yeah. Good evening. My name is Christine Furlong. We have lived on Newgate Lane for 21 years. And we live very near the proposed site. Because of time limits, I'm going to focus on just 2 very important points: the dangers of the road and the danger of the proposed pathway. The highways inspection raised concerns about pedestrian safety leaving the proposed site entrance into Newgate Lane. It was deemed too dangerous because of the narrow road, no street lights, and the 60 miles per hour speed limit. Therefore, they asked for a footpath to be connected from the development to an established path in Newgate Lane. The opinion of the planning officer was that this new pathway increases pedestrian safety. I believe it does the exact opposite. The new pathway will lead pedestrians straight into the only entrance of Newgate nurseries. I live directly opposite where the new pathway will exit, and this is what I see. Large juggernaut lorries deliver to Newgate nurseries on a daily basis, sometimes several times a day. These juggernauts reverse in and out of the nursery, turning in the road and often unloading on the roadside using a forklift truck, directly at the proposed footpath exit. Many of these juggernauts come from the continent. They are not familiar with the narrow road and are often left-hand drive, thus increasing the risks. Newgate Lane is simply unable to safely cater for these large vehicles. We have numerous photographs and video evidence of these incidents. Recently, I've witnessed examples of near-miss accidents on Newgate Lane and Green Lane. A white van in the dark at night misjudged the road and ended up in the ditch. A horse and rider were badly spooked by a lorry. And I witnessed a car swerving to avoid potholes and almost hitting a cyclist. The proposed footpath will not mitigate these dangers because if pedestrians wanted to access local amenities such as schools, shops and bus stops, they would use the main entrance from the site and turn left into Newgate Lane towards Green Lane, not right. This would take them directly into a 60-mile-per-hour narrow country lane, which highways deem too dangerous for pedestrians leaving the site. In my opinion, the planned footpath is flawed for the following reasons. It contravenes the Greenbelt regulations. Most pedestrians leaving the site to access local amenities would turn left and go towards Green Lane and not Newgate Lane. The proposed footpath exit at Newgate Nurseries is quite simply very dangerous, as it changes from 30 to 60 and will actually lead people into danger. Pedestrians, children, prams and wheelchair users would be exiting blindly into Newgate Lane where there is constant heavy vehicle movement. The nursery is open 7 days a week and is busy with deliveries and customers, many of whom park their cars on the road, which would directly block the proposed exit. The proposed footpath exit is the most dangerous part of Newgate Lane due to the immediate proximity of Newgate Nursery's entrance. Another point is that the field surrounding the proposed building is currently used as valuable agricultural land. Heavy agricultural machinery will have to cross over this footpath, thus creating more hazard for pedestrians. I would urge councillors to fully reject this application, but if not, I would ask councillors to defer the decision. Councillors need to make a site visit and see for themselves on the ground the dangers posed by the plan and the proposed footpath. The reason it should be rejected is a desecration of the green belt. It would be extremely dangerous and put people at risk. There is no need for this footpath, and it's just plain silly.
Okay, thanks, Christine. Thanks for your representation. Do we have a David Pye with us this evening? Good evening, David. If you can press the speak button, then we can hear you, please.
Good evening.
Good evening, that's better. If you can introduce yourself, you have 4 minutes, okay?
Yeah, before I start, can I ask that a particular photograph, the satellite image, is displayed on the screen, please?
Tell us which one.
Well, it's the very first one, I think, that one.
That one?
If that's okay, thank you.
Yeah, can you leave that up, Fiona, please? Okay, David, 4 minutes, okay?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Pye, and my wife and I are residents of Newgate Lane. Firstly, I want to express our concerns on the effects of the proposed development on the visual amenity of the area. A dictionary definition of amenity is the pleasantness or attractiveness of a place. So in NPPF terms, amenity is used to refer to the quality or character of an area and elements that contribute to the overall enjoyment of that area. Local Plan Policy G1 also states green belts are mostly to protect it from development, maintain the openness and character of the area. I wish to draw your attention to that photograph on the screen. It's a satellite photo of the area with the subject barns outlined in red. Anyone at all familiar with the area will know that the subject site is on view for approximately 270 degrees from publicly accessible places. Hope Lane on the left or east, as you look at that, and beyond that to Cage Lane and Royalty Lane, Newgate Lane on the right or west, and Green Lane, and beyond that, the Penwitham bypass at the top or the north of the picture. This is not an insignificant tucked away plot with natural screening. It is a highly prominent site in the very centre of a network of greenbelt fields that can be seen for many hundreds of yards in all directions. These concerns were recognised by South Ribble Planning when allowing the original barns, and led South Ribble Planning to stipulate the materials, colour and texture of the barns in order for them to blend into the landscape. Whilst the planning application is outline only, we believe it is indicative of the type of development that the applicant fully expects to occupy the plot. That is 4 very large 2-storey dwellings that would be highly visible, visually intrusive, incongruous buildings that would stick out like the proverbial sore thumb and have severe negative and permanent effect on the visual amenity of the area. In simple terms, blots on the landscape that contravene local plan policy G1 and the fundamental aims of the Greenbelt to maintain the character of the area. Secondly, footpath implications. The proposed footpath not only presents an unsafe release for pedestrians onto the busiest and most dangerous part of Newgate Lane, but represents destruction of some 150 square metres of greenbelt agricultural land and hedgerow that forevermore would be classed as developed land. Whilst it may seem inconsequential, it creates a developed boundary for the field to the west of it, a field that only 2 years ago had 70% of its boundary open to the greenbelt would, if the application was approved, become an isolated plot of land forever separated from the surrounding greenbelt in direct contravention of NPPF and South Ribble local plan policies. We therefore ask that the application be refused. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks, David. When we've had the 4 representations, Fiona, I'll fetch you in to give some clarity, yeah? Are we still there, Fiona? When I've had the 4, I will bring you in, okay, before the word council.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Do we have a Mike Keller, please? Oh. As if by magic. Mike, once again, if you press the speak button, and you will have 4.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Mark Keller. I am a resident of Newgate Lane. I live opposite the barns. I would first like to express my gratitude to you all for giving up your time so that we can all take part in this democratic process. Democracy has taken a battering lately, so it's good to know that you are here to ensure that short-term profits will not supersede the long-term benefits of the community. I have 2 points to make. The first point is context and openness. There's been a 30% increase in housing on Newgate Lane in the past 5 years, and some housing applications have been rejected. The planning office and the planning inspectors have refused permission for housing at 3 separate sites in the past 2 years. These refusals are based on the importance of open spacing in between housing and uninterrupted views beyond. The planning inspectors have noted several times how Newgate Lane spills into open countryside and the significance the barns have in creating the green belt openness. In contrast, the proposed housing development would completely destroy the agricultural profile of the barns. In its place, large executive-style houses and garages. Vehicles and people movement on the site would also impact negatively on openness. This is an open agricultural area. The barns are visible from almost every angle and they sit at the highest point of Hutton. On every side, the barns are surrounded by working agricultural land. 4 fields with horses and an agricultural field. The barns became non-agricultural storage buildings in August 2024. In order to maintain openness, the planning inspector imposed a number of conditions, including no changes whatsoever to the appearance of the two barns, no storage whatsoever outside of the barns, parking limited to one small area between both barns. Only 3 car movements per day, just 3 cars to move on and off the site once each per day. These conditions are in place specifically to protect the green belt, and they show the importance placed on the openness of this site by inspectors. 4 enormous executive-style houses with garages, outside parking, and increased car movement would create an incongruous vista, sitting as they would in the middle of agricultural land. It would look odd, overbearing, and out of place. It is exactly the kind of development that planning policy is here to prevent and shield us from. It will be a disaster in terms of openness, and it will be irreversible. My second point is that this is a speculative development. The applicant builds extensively in Whitestake. None of this is social housing. We've had no SILF from this developer. Typically, following planning permission, there's an application for an increase in the size of buildings, and these are successful. Finally, this is not a development which will fill the housing gap for ordinary people. And our planning policies warn against this kind of speculative development. Once again, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark. Do we have a Leslie Parkinson, please? Take your time, Leslie, you're amongst friends. Yes, okay, so 4 minutes, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting residents to speak tonight. We really do appreciate it. You know, it's just 9 months since I sat here when they wanted to turn the barns into storage. Now, the plan is to put 4 huge houses in place of the barns, bang in the middle of our lovely agricultural rural landscape. The planning report says that 4 houses would take up less space and should therefore be approved. You're right, they would take up less space, but we do respectfully disagree with the planning officer's opinion about impact on openness, because it's been assessed only in spatial terms, not visual. This is a red flag. It doesn't account for how 4 supersized executive houses would look. These are 4 extremely large houses. Look at the scale, look at the size. You can see from the photos in the planning officer's report how big the barns are. They're massive. Well, the houses would actually exceed the barn footprint on the south side, the east side, and the west sides. And the impact on the eye would be more bulk and greater built space, not less. We know that building types and materials would be part of a second stage application, but at this stage, please consider the visual impact on openness that 4 executive houses would bring. They'd be 9.5 metres high. That's 25% higher than the existing long barn. They significantly increase the footprint spreading into undeveloped areas of the site shown on the photos. The size and regularity of spacing between the buildings means that they'll stand out. They won't fit in with the surroundings. They'll be an eyesore. The plan shows gaps between the houses, but please note these have all got parking spaces between them, 12 to 16 in total. So we'd see cars, caravans, motorhomes, 4+ per house. So this would in effect create a line of bulk along the full length of the development. There wouldn't be any gaps. We know that garages will ultimately fill any gaps. They were included in the original application, by the way, but been removed to get approval, we think, at this stage. Vehicles move. The site, as Mark said, is currently restricted to 3 car movements a day, so there would be a massive increase in vehicle movement daily. This would have a negative impact on visual openness. In stark contrast, the barns as they are, they're open-sided, as you've seen from the pictures, and on a day like today with the sun behind you can see through them into the fields beyond. This is important for green belt profile. And it's clear from the photos we've seen from Fiona today. Another important matter that hasn't been mentioned yet, horses graze on fields right up to the site, 4 separate stables. Owners are, they tell me, horrified about noise and movement on that site. House and car alarms, barking dogs, garden equipment. These are all sudden noises. Horses are prey animals. They respond with anxiety behaviours. They will sweat and panic. They can cause severe accidents for the horse themselves and for riders if people are on them. Please be aware that the field that goes right up to the barns, it has pregnant mares and foals in it. Okay. We do ask that you please reject this application on the following 4 grounds. Spatial and visual impact on openness, with 4 executive houses, parked and moving traffic and garages. The proposed pathway has a real negative impact on openness and massively compromises pedestrian safety. Danger to pedestrians using the main site entrance and animal welfare. There's a lot of residents here supporting our objections tonight, and we all feel particularly anxious about this development. We've had no contact whatsoever from the developer. Neither do we have enough time, really, to fully explain our objections. We do want to show you. We want to show you what it's like there and what you see. So, yeah, we just ask for you not to approve. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Leslie. Thank you very much. I'm going to bring Catherine in just for some points of clarity for committee before I bring in Councillor Mrs Smith. Okay?
Thanks, Chair. Yes. So just some points in relation to this particular application. So I'd just like to point out to members that the NPPF, as we know, and we've provided training to our planning committee members, was changed in December this year. And one of the paragraphs in the NPPF that was amended was the wording of the paragraph that is most pertinent to this application. And it's paragraph 154G of the NPPF. And it indicates that when we're referring to redevelopment of previously developed lands, which this is because there's a lawful storage use on the site, you have to assess whether any proposed development would cause substantial harm to the openness of the green belt. And the new word that's been added there is substantial, because the government's intention is to try and facilitate a far greater number of new houses throughout the country, and that's not just within urban areas, but it also allows for developments in the green belt. In this particular case, there is a clear exemption in the NPPF to allow the redevelopment of this site for residential purposes. And whilst I hear members' concerns, having looked very closely at the scheme, officers cannot conclude that the removal of the barns and the replacement with 4 dwellings would result in substantial harm to its openness. So that's in relation to the first point. In relation to the second point, around pedestrian safety, officers have worked extensively with the Highway Authority to conclude on a proposal that does form a safe development. Highway engineers have scrutinised the scheme, both in relation to the site access itself and in relation to the public footpath that's proposed, and conclude that the development will be safe. And in the absence of any evidence to the contrary, in terms of highway evidence, it would be very difficult for members to substantiate a reason for refusal around impact on highway safety from the development. I understand residents' concerns that it would lead to development and introduction of an element of development into a field that's currently in agricultural use, but it will be close to the field boundary and will not impact on the ability of the field to be used for agricultural use. In relation to queries around animal welfare impact, again, there is no evidence been provided that there will be a significant issue in that regard. I think what members have to be aware of is that there is a lawful use of that building for storage purposes, with associated potentially HGV movements up and down that lane, noise and disturbance as a result of those former agricultural units. And in officers' view, the level of vehicular movements that would be associated with the development will actually not be any more significant in terms of impact on highway safety than the existing lawful use of the building. I heard other concerns raised in relation to the fact that these properties are not proposed to be affordable housing, but they are proposed to be for custom and self-build housing. And the council has a duty to provide plots for such purposes to enable people to actually design their own homes. I've heard lots of concerns raised about the design and the impact of the visual appearance of these properties, but we don't know what they are because those are matters reserved for subsequent consideration. So cannot be given any weight in the consideration of this application. I've also had concerns that no CIL will be payable in the development, but that is because government policy specifically allows for that, to promote custom and self-built housing, to enable people to build and design their own homes. So having assessed the application, we do feel as officers that it is policy compliant and that there are special circumstances in terms of pedestrian safety that outweigh the harm to the green belt by resulting not from the dwellings themselves, because that element is policy compliant, but simply from the provision of a public footpath that the Highway Authority are satisfied with in terms of safety. So I hope that's answered some of the queries, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that advice, Catherine. Councillor Mrs Smith.
Good evening, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank my fellow residents for their contribution this evening. I think they have done a splendid job. I'd also like to thank a number of other residents who have come this evening to show their concerns about and strength of feeling about this particular development. I think the passion with which the residents have actually put their case this evening shows you the deep concern that they have about the forthcoming construction. Has been stated in the report that locally there was 28 objections and 3 supporters, and a further afield there was 42 in support and 1 objector. Those supporters were from further afield in South Ribble and also from Chorley, which the locals feel does not represent how they feel about this development, and really it is not wanted. On this evening's agenda, there are 7 applications. 4 of them are in the Western parishes and 3 of them are in Greenbelt. 2 have already had their applications turned down last year. The applications continue to come, and our villages are absolutely just becoming small towns. It really is remarkable how much building is going on. And I do understand what Catherine has said this evening, and I appreciate that the officers are to a degree tied by the MPPFs, but nevertheless, we have to also consider that the residents who have been there for very many years feel that the erosion of the green belt is really going beyond what would be expected of a normal development for the continuation of the thriving of villages. This application means the demolition of a perfectly good barns and the building of 4 large detached houses in the middle of a field in Greenbelt, down a single track lane. And I think it's important we understand that single track lane. To accomplish this, we will have to build a footpath, which seems very, very strange. And I know there has been a lot of arguing with the county about whether the footpath should be put in, whether the brook should be culverted. But nevertheless, this footpath will have to be compliant with LCC and adopted by them, while the surrounding roads are not. That road is unadopted, or lane, or track, whichever you like to call it. So therefore, we have a situation where we're building a footpath in the middle. Well, it's not in the middle, it's to the side of a field with a hedge at one side and a very deep ditch just by the side of it. It seems ridiculous, really, to have to build a footpath to service 4 houses in the middle of the field. That footpath moves from north to south towards Chainhouse Lane for the residents' safety and for the public safety. There has no footpath been even initiated or even put into place for the movement from south to north. Surely that safety is just as important, because that track is still single lane as it moves towards Green Lane. The lane is 60 miles an hour. It's unadopted. It's a single track. There's no lighting. There's deep ditches on either side of the track. I don't know whether the imposition of a 30 mile an hour speed limit could help. It may be, it has been suggested, but there again, the main concern that I have is that this footpath through the farmland, where it ends, is right next to Newgate Nurseries, where articulated lorries unload most days of the week. I would wonder if, as has been mentioned this evening, if it's possible that the committee will consider going on a site visit to actually have a look at the situation and where the footpath comes out at the entrance to Newgate Nurseries. And on the basis of that, if you would consider that, and maybe a county officer could come as well, you would consider, if you can't consider refusing it this evening, you would defer the matter until everybody has had ample opportunity to see the dangers that are very, very prevalent at that point where the residents would be actually exiting the lane. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Councillor Smith. Thanks for your representation. Thank you. We now have Councillor Michael Green, who is the neighbouring ward councillor. Good evening, Councillor Green. Can I just say 4 minutes, yeah?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomason, for permitting me for permitting me to speak this evening. And good evening, colleagues. I've listened to what the members of the public and the local residents said, and I get the strength of feeling that they clearly don't want this application, and we see that from the numbers. But I've also listened to the officers who set out a very detailed, clear view and have dealt with some of those concerns. So I'm not going to argue about the inappropriateness of the proposed dwellings, because I think that point has been made clear, so I'll accept that. So what I wish to focus on, Mr. Chairman, is the footpath. Now, the starting point for me is that the development should not be approved by yourselves this evening unless very special circumstances are demonstrated which clearly outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt. Now, the proposed pedestrian footpath, as the report sets out, would cause harm to the purposes of the Greenbelt by way of encroachment. It is clear that the proposed related footpath represents inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. And I would go as far as saying that is where this should end. If we have a Greenbelt policy and it's going to mean anything, it's sometimes there's a need to actually stand up and defend that Greenbelt policy. But we seem to be given ever weaker excuses, and I think I accept that that's a national thrust as well. But before we know it, the Greenbelt will be almost meaningless. But I will go on to deal with the points which are set out in the report. So it's argued in the report that the very special circumstances which justify the outweighing of harm to the Greenbelt are that the proposed footpath would improve pedestrian safety. So by building this footpath, which is rather weird, as Councillor Mrs Smith referred to actually need to provide a footpath to facilitate a development, but they would have to improve pedestrian safety. Now, as has been explained by the residents very well, the path would meet the road at the very most dangerous and busiest point on Newgate Lane. A point where you've got HGV movements, deliveries, it's a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit and there's no lighting. So I struggle to see how on earth this footpath will actually improve pedestrian safety. Not that it will just negate what's currently there, but it will improve the safety over what we currently have. I do not accept that point, and therefore my submission to you, Mr Chairman, is that we have not demonstrated very special circumstances which override the clear purposes that the Greenbelt policy is there for. I would therefore submit, Mr Chairman, that you should refuse this application on this basis this evening. However, if you are minded not to do so, I will concur with the request which has been made that you at the very least defer this application until yourselves as experienced planning members with your officers and potentially highways officers are able to carry out a full site visit and see the situation for yourself, and then you'll be able to be satisfied whether or not it improves pedestrian safety, which I submit it does not. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Green. Thank you for that. Right, we now have the applicants, Richard Fairclough and Ben Chewson, who wish to speak jointly. Okay, good evening, chaps. You have 4 minutes to make your representations and just do it however you wish, okay?
Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Ben Tucson. I wanted to come this evening to speak in favour of the site at Newgate. Then I learnt Steve, one of the applicants, is on a pre-planned trip. He apologises for not being able to attend, so I'm here to speak on his behalf as well as myself. The proposed site is a fantastic scheme to build 4 beautiful self-built homes, an amazing opportunity for families to design, build and live in a home that they have always dreamt of. This is a brownfield site, which is exactly the kind of site that the Housing Secretary is pushing to redevelop into residential. All the consultees that have responded, United Utilities, Environmental, LCC Highways, Fire and Rescue, Ecology, Arborist, some had initial concerns, some with advisories, to which we have addressed, responded, and now all consultees have no objections. The planning officer has recommended this application for approval because it's a fit for the NPPF. I believe this so much. Upon this site, if it gets granted, myself, my fiancée, along with our 3 children, will be designing, building and moving into our dream home. My sons, Alex, Owen, go to Priory High, so it's a perfect cycling distance for them to get to school. Alea, my daughter, goes to Ashbridge Nursery, which is where she will remain until the end of her primary school term. In my job, I spend lots of time keeping up and watching planning committee meetings within the local area. After reading all the relevant information around this application, I believe this scheme should be granted. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Richard Fairclough. I'm one of the co-owners of the site. So like Ben says, Steve's my dad. He's actually away. So obviously we're filling in for him. Right, so first of all, I'd like to thank you. I know you squeezed us in last minute because we were a bit late coming to the front to want to speak. But after reading the objections, etc., I thought it was only right that we came and said our piece and brought our side to the party. To start with, obviously, as Ben's already said, the planning department have said that they would put this through for approval. The other big subject tonight is the footpath. Now, I've got a letter here that was sent to LCC. I'll just read the paragraph that's the most important one. So I'm aware several individuals have contacted me directly with concerns over the proposal. However, as a consultee and with mitigating measures now presented, I would find it difficult to object to current legislation and guidelines. Therefore, LCC have no objections, providing the conditions and the highway meet the conditions below, which is obviously the 106 everything. So going back to the pavement thing, surely common sense prevails with this. We're going to build a footpath for everybody to use. It's going to take people off the road and they're going to be able to walk down that pavement. It's going to take them off this single track road. Granted, it's not the whole length of the road, but everything, every little bit helps, doesn't it? So going back to the site itself, it is a brownfield site. Now, we're proposing to build 4 family homes on it. At the end of the day, yeah, they're not starter homes, the 4 family homes. But as people move up to those properties, it's going to free other properties up in the chain. So there are going to be new starter homes because somebody's moved from that one to the next one to the next one. So we are helping, and as is been said on all the news over the last year or so, we're desperate for new properties. The top and bottom is all we're trying to do is get the development over the line to produce homes for families and bring families into the area. I think to sum this up, all the issues that have been put in front of us, we have sorted out, the pavement situation and everything else. And I think what we've got to look at here is the planning, planning should be granted at the end of the day. The planning system is about legislation and it's not about hearsay. So that's my bit. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your representations, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Bit different than last month, Mrs. Green, Councillor Green. A little bit different than last month. I was at home this time last month. Anyway, listen, I'm going to open this up to committee. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. It's just some points of clarity, really. I mean, we've heard that this road isn't adopted. I've just checked on the Mario site and it is adopted. And we also heard that the footpath comes out into the 60-mile-an-hour zone, which it actually comes out where the 30-mile-an-hour zone starts. So there's a little bit of ambiguity there. So it's dead on the line. Anyone who has driven down Newgate Lane will know that it's quite a rough road to go down. One side is reasonably well, the other side is like the streets of San Francisco. So traffic tends to stick to the best side and not go down the worst side. So it's just a clarification just to make sure that the road is adopted and the footpath does come out in the 30-mile-an-hour zone. Thank you.
Just come back on that point, if you will.
Yes, it does come out on the 30-mile-per-hour section, which is next to where it becomes national speed limit applies, and it is an adopted road up until that point.
You happy with that, Councillor Martin? Yeah. Councillor Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chair. I can see there's different aspects to this application. We've had a discussion this evening about the actual development. but there's been no discussion about the already existing problems down Newgate Lane, which I feel that we've got to take in consideration. Because of the design of that road, you've got a long row of cottages as you enter Newgate Lane and other properties. Those cottages have no parking facilities whatsoever. They have no drives, so they park on the road. And getting down Newgate Lane is a single passage. You can't get two cars down that road when there's all the cars parked down there, which is every day. So we've got that problem. You've got to think about the lorries that's going to be going down there for construction. You've already got the problem of the lorries going down to the nursery, and plus you're going to have all this extra traffic, which the size of the houses potentially could be, if not more, 3 cars per household, with various traffic movements. So none of this has been taken in consideration or even mentioned this evening. It's very, very, very narrow down there. And then from the nursery onwards is even worse. It's just a track. It's not a road, it's a track, a rough track. There's no lights down there and there's no pavements down there. Hence the proposal of putting this pavement in. That footpath, though, constitutes inappropriate development in the green belt. So it's not relevant to this development. It shouldn't be happening. These properties are very, very large. They're not in keeping with the existing properties down Newgate. And previously, there were storage buildings, agricultural buildings, which were allowed in Greenbelt. These are not agricultural buildings. These are 4 substantial properties whose footprint and height exceeds the existing barns. So how anybody can say it's not affecting the visual aspect of the countryside? Of course it's affecting, as one of the residents said. When the sun's shining through the barns, you can see through the barns, you've not totally lost the aspect of the countryside. With 4 solid houses and vehicles in front and all the rest of it, you've lost all that vista. So to me, there's a massive impact on the openness of the field. And there aren't, as I can see, no special circumstances that lend itself to these developments. So I feel personally, there's also in the report a reference to errors on the application forms about the drawings, and the forms don't tally up and don't show the number of vehicle movements. I don't know what that's about, but I'm a bit concerned about that. So all in all, I'm not happy with this development. I don't feel that these people who are used to living in a rural area should have to put up with this. So I would like to propose refusal.
Okay, Councillor Green. Can you make clear what policy grounds you wish to use? Greenbelt? The openness of the Greenbelt? Inappropriate development in the Greenbelt with the footpath. Okay. Councillor David Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go so far as to second that, I'm afraid, but I do have reservations about this. If it's policy compliant, I think we've got to come up with firm grounds against it. What I do have a concern about, though, is that this is custom build stroke self-build for large units. If I build my dream house, it's going to be different to somebody else's dream house, and it's going to be prominent. It's going to be something that people will look at. And if that's in a prominent site in the middle of the greenbelt, visible from every angle, I don't see how that is helpful to the residents in terms of their visual amenity. But if it's policy compliant, I fully accept that that is an aspect that would be addressed not at this application, but at the next stage. I just have reservations about it.
Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've written that many notes during this meeting. As you know, I don't come totally prepared. I don't write everything down before I get in. I don't make my decision before I get here. I've got pages and pages of it, and my pen has eventually run out of ink. So I've found myself a pencil. Before I speak regarding this application, I have to say that I've had several conversations with the applicant, Steve, who I know. I have not, as he will know, voiced any opinion or option. I've told him on 3 occasions, I think, that I haven't seen the papers yet, so I haven't even read them, so I don't know what is going to happen. I've also had several conversations with members of Newgate Lane, as they... Well, as Steve does. Steve is a neighbour across the fields, and then the neighbours on Newgate Lane are neighbours across the fields. I've had similar conversations with them where I have not voiced an opinion. I've listened to what has been said, which is why I haven't come armed with masses of information. I have got a little bit because I've taken out what is the new MPPF. And I will, if I can find it in my papers, quote a little bit of what I see in there with regard to this application. I will, by the way, second the applicant for refusal, but I would draw attention to para 142 of the MPPF, which states that the fundamental aim of Greenbelt is to protect the urban sprawl. Now that's in there, and that is on A of the Greenbelt purposes, and C. Also, I find that it doesn't comply with to assist in safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. That's a very big one, Chair, a very big one. So I don't think this application complies with that either. Obviously Greenbelt is one with the footpath. I don't accept that the footpath has no impact on it. I think it has a serious impact on Greenbelt. And the other side of that, I'm listening to residents, the detrimental impact on existing neighbours and buildings. The visual impact on them is significant. So I'd refuse it on, first of all, on G1, which is Greenbelt, and on G17, which is the impact on existing neighbours and buildings. So that's to be clear on that. And I can go on about that, Chair, about the visual aspect, and the neighbours and people have identified the reason about the visual aspect. The barn belongs in the country. The barn belongs in a field. The various applications for that barn and extensions for that barn have highlighted it's for agricultural use. Now, I know what happened at a previous planning application, that it went to the inspector and the inspector overturned, but nevertheless, I still think that applies. The G1 on the Greenbelt and G17 is on the impact of the existing neighbours and their visual amenity. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. Catherine, did you want to come in with some comments on that?
Yeah, I would like to just touch on some of the comments that have been made, but more specifically, I'll come back to Councillor Smith's points first. So firstly, I think we just have to be very careful in terms of some of the references that have just been pointed out in terms of the MPPF. So, for example, when we look at the purposes of the Greenbelt, Councillor Smith referred to purpose A, which is to check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas. And there is, under planning interpretation, we could not say that a village context constitutes a large built-up area. So it could not fall under purpose A. I agree with Councillor Smith that when you're looking at the development in this type of part of the green belt, that you would be looking at whether the development might, there might be an impact in terms of encroachment, but I'll come on to that in the future. Also, in terms of the reasons for refusal, Councillor Smith, in terms of policy G1, which you referred to in relation to our local plan, as I mentioned in my earlier comments, policy G1 in terms of the exemption for redevelopment of brownfield land has been superseded now by the new NPPF because the wording is no longer consistent. So we couldn't rely on the wording of policy G1 in terms of that particular exemption because, as I said, the wording in the NPPF has been amended since that point. Also, in respect of wording in relation to policy G17, I would urge some caution in relation to looking to refuse an application in terms of visual impact, because we don't know what that visual impact will be. It's not for consideration as part of this application. That would be something we would be able to consider at a future date. So again, I would urge caution about using that as a reason for refusal. So just coming back to Councillor Shaw's point that, well, because they are going to be custom and self-build plots, how do we ensure that perhaps their design would be appropriate to the rural vernacular? And the answer to that is the Reserve Matters application. We will assess the development and its appearance and its impact on its visual surroundings at that point, should planning permission be granted. And just going on to some of the concerns that Councillor Green raised, which were largely around perhaps the principle of the reuse of this building and its purposes, and the fact that it was erected for agricultural purposes. It does have the appearance of an agricultural barn, which we all know is inappropriate in a rural setting. But the issue is that is not the lawful use of the building. The lawful use of the building is for storage purposes. And for that reason, it is therefore brownfield land. And it is, you know, the NPPF specifically allows the redevelopment of brownfield land. So we cannot ensure in the future that an agricultural use, you know, it would resume. We can't ensure that. It has now got an industrial storage use. So I think we need to look at what type of activity is associated with that existing use, because residents and councillors have raised considerable concern about the condition of the access road. You've talked about, you know, some of the cottages not having parking on the street, difficult highway conditions. And the position there is that in terms of the lawful use of that building, there are obviously vehicles going up and down that lane. Some of them may be HGVs delivering products for storage in that facility. And the Highway Authority's view is that actually the proposed use will not put a greater strain on the highway conditions there. And in fact, there may be some betterment because it may remove some of those HGVs, not necessarily during the construction phase, because I understand that as an issue as well. But there is a construction management plan condition on the scheme that, as recommended, which would help to control that. And in terms of how pedestrians would move to and from the site, under planning, you have to look at what is something is reasonable and proportionate to the scale of development being proposed. So it would not be reasonable and proportionate to require a footpath away from the site to the north. It is reasonable and proportionate to require a connection to the footpath that runs to the south. And so that, for that reason, that's the approach the Highway Authority have taken to ensure that the scheme, you know, it is safe for pedestrians to use. And I do understand concerns that the members have raised in relation to how the scheme is assessed. So the principle of redevelopment of the site is appropriate. The issue is that the footpath we need to consider whether there are very special circumstances. The report clearly sets out how a consideration of very special circumstances should be weighed. You identify the harm by reason of inappropriate, very limited harm to openness because it is a very small footpath, and then you identify the benefits. And the benefits are not just to pedestrian safety, but they are also to the delivery of custom and self-built housing, which is something that the council actually has a duty to provide. I hope that's helpful, Chair.
You've had 4 minutes, I'm afraid. Would you mind taking your seat again? No, fine. Okay, thanks. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, my voice sounded a bit when I'm full of a cold. Just looking through the existing planning history, back in 2022, this was then converted into storage facility. Prior to that, it was agricultural use.
Yeah, can we have less heckling? I mean, I just don't want to clear the room. I want you all to be in here.
I'm merely referring to when.
Councillor Williams.
I'm merely referring to what is in front of me in the report here of when the application was made, not necessarily when it was determined. So I'm talking about that's what I'm talking about in the report in front of me here. So it was changed from agricultural use to storage use. Can I just a point of clarification? If it was still agricultural use, would it still be classed as previously developed land?
No.
No. Right. Okay. So for want of a better expression, it's been changed for that. It's changed for that purpose. So that's the first thing I wanted to do. That. So effectively, it's using the planning system to get a building on site. Is what I'm leading to. Had that footpath not existed, or nowhere could be found for that footpath, then I'm presuming that highways would still be unhappy with the application, and therefore they would have an objection to having those 4 houses there if that footpath wasn't there. That's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting from that report. Is that right?
I think the Highway Authority were keen to explore whether, improvements to pedestrian safety and linkages could be made. And obviously the applicant has amended the scheme to include the footpath. When it first came in, it didn't have the footpath. So the Highway Authority expressed some concerns and asked for that period of negotiation between officers and the applicant to see if a proposal could be put forward that included improved pedestrian safety.
Okay. So what we're saying is that footpath effectively facilitates the development, and then is the key effectively to unlocking it. Now, it all hinges on this. For me, it all hinges on this footpath, then, in whether whether the footpath itself is greenbelt compliant. At the minute, I'm not making. It doesn't matter about the size of the houses, what they look at, what they're made of, the shape, colour. They could be bright pink, blue, whatever. It makes the difference at the minute because we don't know what they look like, so we can disregard that because this is just access only. Now, if the only thing we can take in isolation, therefore, then is this footpath, and whether that is damaging enough to the green belt that it should be refused on footpath grounds. Now, a small footpath that is 2 meters wide at the side of a field, as a technicality, as shall I say, doesn't affect the green belt in any weight as what would building a huge building would. It's a small footpath at the side of a field. So it's getting people off a track. Yes, it's unlit. It's getting people off a track and people are walking down it. So as far as I'm concerned, it does improve residential safety. So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place here because I don't necessarily like the fact that there's going to be 4 huge houses on this site, but this is policy compliant. It's facilitated by a footpath that has minimal harm within the green belt. Therefore, it is policy compliant. So if it is policy, regardless of whether somebody has, this is just my own personal view, gamed the planning system to be able to build 4 houses there, and and the fact we've got a footpath within minimal use that's facilitating it, that footpath is the key to it. So I have got no choice but to go with the officer's recommendation and propose approval. I've got no choice.
Okay, Councillor Williams, thank you very much for that. Councillor Smith, you wanted to come back?
Yes, Chair, I wanted to come back.
You have already seconded refusal.
I have. I'm not changing it. I've seconded it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wanted just to come back.
Very quickly then, please, because time's moving on.
A bit to say, but on what has been said, about the G17. G17, I think, still exists for me. And G1, we have a local plan. We have a current local plan. I know we've got a new plan, and we're all in sort of a little bit of limbo at the moment with the new NPPF, which has just come in at the end of December, and our new local plan, which is out for consultation, that has very, very little weight. And we have our existing local plan, which is one of the documents that we're working with. And I've not seen anything yet that gets rid of, if you like, G1 Greenbelt, because that still, I think, applies. And with regard to the pathway impact or the large built-up area, it does say in here that and if I could find the space, that Newgate Lane is largely built up in the south part. It is because of the development that's coming on. But then you come into the area where it isn't built up, which is in Greenbelt. So you're travelling from one area to the other. And in protecting Greenbelt in 142 in the NPPF, the government attaches great importance to Greenbelts. The fundamental aim of Greenbelt policy is to prevent urban sprawl by keeping the land permanently open. The essential characteristics of Greenbelt are their openness and their permanence. So I just wanted to come back on that, Chair. I haven't changed my mind. It's just strengthened my position, I feel, in seconding refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. Catherine's just going to come back and then I'll bring in Councillor Gabbett. Excuse me.
Yeah, Councillor Smith, just to make the point that obviously our local plan is now somewhat dated, and it obviously was prepared in 2015 under an old version of the local plan. And in planning law, it is quite clear that if your local plan is no longer consistent with the NPPF, it's the NPPF that takes precedence. And the wording of the relevant section of the NPPF is no longer consistent with what's in our local plan. So when we look at the exceptions that you know, to development in the Greenbelt that has been pointed to in the officer report in relation to brownfield land, it's the wording of the NPPF that has to take precedence. So the development has to result in substantial harm to the openness of the Greenbelt. And that's where, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on whether you want to, you know, promote development or restrict development in the Greenbelt, the wording has changed. The direction of government policy has changed.
Okay, thanks for that, Catherine. Councillor Gabbett.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to second Councillor Williams' proposal that we accept officer recommendations. We've gone over it and I know people have raised the concerns, but the fact of the matter is policy compliance. It all hinges on the footpath, but it sets out that there's going to be, I think it's about 215 metres of hedgerow put in, which negates any ecological impact, and the actual amount isn't excessive for impacting the green belt. And that all comes about from the experts we have for highways, which is LCC, who are saying that's what needs to be put in to make it safe. So I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Okay, so I have had a proposal for refusal by Councillor Mrs Green, seconded by Councillor Smith on Greenbelt amenity issues. And I've had a proposal for approval as per the officer's recommendation by Councillor Hayden Williams, seconded by Councillor Peter Gabbett. Do I have any other proposals this evening, i.e. a deferral? No. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. It's not a proposal, but if I could read something out, which the planning inspector came up with, which might be helpful to. It was
when did the planning inspector come up with this?
in August 2023.
Would that be relevant now to this application?
Councillor Smith, if there is any reference in that, whatever you're going to read out to the MPPF, then it's likely that it will have been superseded and the advice may not be current.
Yeah, I understand that, and I'm not going from that direction, but I think it might just help members of the public, and it might help the committee as well, including myself when I read it, to be quite honest. And it's only a short piece, Chair, but it's came from the planning inspector, the 24th of August 23, that the planning committee voted against the officer's recommendations. In principle, there is nothing unreasonable about this approach, as the planning committee is not duty bound to follow the advice of professional officers. It is not uncommon for a planning committee to disagree and apply their own planning judgment to reach a different view of the merits of the proposal. It just might help people understand that, you know, we are here not necessarily just to disagree with officers. I mean, we work with them all the time, but we do have a different opinion, and we are allowed, if we think it's right, just to challenge that. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thanks, Councillor Smith. Right, I'm going to take one more now, and I'm going to tie up, and we're going to go to the vote for refusal first, because that's an amendment. Sorry, Councillor Mulliner, you're too late. Councillor Williams.
With regard to the statement that Councillor Smith has made, I have proposed refusal and approval to various things in the past against officer recommendation. I'm quite known for that. In this particular case, I'm going along with officer approval. Just basically because it's there in black and white. I don't like the application. Don't anybody does. But at the end of the day, it is legally compliant, and it is legally compliant, and it'd be very, very difficult for us to defend it at an appeal. That's basically all I want to say.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Williams. Right, I'm going to tie this up now. We are going to go. Firstly, we're going to vote on the amendment proposed by Councillor Mrs. Green and seconded by Councillor Phil Smith to refuse the application, okay, against officer's recommendation. So this is for refusal. Can we go to the electronic vote, please?
Oh.
Councillor Green, what? Yes.
Press yes.
Press yes.
You press yes.
No, this is right. So this is for refusal, which is what you proposed. So you should be for refusal.
Yes. Want to start? I think. We need to start again.
I don't think we need to start again, do we? No.
Members have voted not in favour of refusal.
Okay, so if we can now go to the proposal for approval from Councillor Hayden Williams, seconded by Councillor Peter Gabbett, in accordance with the officer's recommendation.
Members have voted in favour of officer recommendation subject to conditions.
Okay, so that is the end of item number 6 this evening. If you have come for that item only, that is the end of that item on the agenda. So if you can leave quietly, please, we can move on to item number 7. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will move on swiftly to item number 7 this evening, which is number 7, Bridgeview Close, Longton. And I would like to invite Jessica Joyman to present this item. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application was called to Planning Committee by the Ward Councillor. The proposal is for a change of use to C2 for a care home for 3 children to young people from the age of 14 to 25, with care provided 24 hours a day for up to 3 carers on a shift basis. This aerial image shows the location of the application site to the district centre of Longton. This image shows the entrance to Bridgeview Close. The application site is a large detached property situated within a cul-de-sac in Longton. The property has 4 bedrooms and a linked annex which has an additional bedroom. The application site is within the green belt. This is detailed in section 10.2 of the committee report, and the application meets exception H. No external changes are proposed to the dwelling. It is considered on balance the proposal would not impact the openness of the green belt. Site history. The agent originally submitted a certificate of lawfulness, but withdrew this and submitted a full plan application last year, which was refused on highway amenity. Since then, the planning agent has resubmitted and reduced the number of young persons in the home from 4 to 3, and submitted a travel note with the application. Representations and consultees. Section 6 and 7 of the Planning Committee report outlines in detail the statutory consultee and neighbour representations received. No statutory consultees have objected. This includes Environmental Health, Lancashire County Council and Lancashire County Council Education. Although I have received a number of objections from neighbouring residents who raise a number of concerns regarding noise, parking and the use to a children's young person's home, as detailed in a summary representation within the committee report at section 7. Parking. The off-road parking is conditioned on the proposed block plan showing 4 off-road spaces with an additional space provided at the front of the property. As per the Planning Committee report in section 10, it provides a detailed assessment of this proposal. 3 members of staff would work on a rota, with the manager mainly working remotely. This is outlined within the travel note and the agent supporting statement. This image shows the application site and the existing parking at present. This is the proposed floor plan showing the that there's no internal changes, and the annex is linked with a therapy room proposed within the grounds. These are images of the street view showing the current entrance into Bridgeview Close itself. In summary, for the reasons outlined and those within the committee report, the recommendation is approval subject to a number of planning conditions. Proposed conditions refer to the noise assessment, parking and the number of children to young people to be cared for within the home. The update sheet refers to the amended wording to confirm the age range. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Jessica, thanks for your presentation on this one. Right, we do have registered speakers on this application. We have a Michael Wade, please. Well, Michael, if you press the speak button, introduce yourself, and then you'll have 4 minutes to make your representations, okay?
Thank you, Chair, committee members, for the opportunity to speak this evening to this proposal. I'm Michael Wade. I live at number 1 Bridgeview Close. I'm here to object to the change of use on the same basis, ostensibly, that it was previously refused, that the amenity of the residents will be severely impacted by the change. The applicant has sought to mitigate the impacts on residents of Bridgeview Close by reducing the occupancy by 1 and demonstrating the mitigation through the production of a traffic report. The traffic report, sadly, is flawed in many areas. I don't know whether it's just ineptitude or the intent to mislead. However, the substance of the report is deficient in many areas. So the baseline that they use of the traffic generation at the site, they used a TRIX report from 2013. That was when the original planning application for the development of the site was put in. That TRIX report was predicated on 13 houses on the site. There aren't. There are 9 houses on the site, only 8 of which are currently occupied and generate any substantial traffic. I'll get to substantial traffic in a minute. There are only 8 houses that are occupied, and of these, only 3 houses generate regular movements in relation to going to work and back and the like. Over 75% of the occupied houses don't generate any significant traffic. The occupants are all home workers, retirees, or don't work. Now, I spent the most enthralling week of my life studying the traffic coming in and out of Bridgeview Close between the hours of 7 in the morning and 11 at night. And this generated a total of 160 vehicle movements a week. So the baseline metric that Potons used was 91 vehicle movements a day, which will be around 650 vehicle movements a week. And in that context, an additional 112, you could accept that will be accepted, but it isn't. It's by an order of magnitude out. So that's 8 houses generate 160 vehicle movements a week, not 91 vehicle movements a day, as they submitted in their traffic report. A baseline that was taken some 12 years ago. Now, that would see one house responsible for over a 70% uplift in the traffic in Bridgeview Close on a weekly basis. And a very small, narrow close, the impacting every single resident due to the location of the house. Every single resident would have traffic coming in and out. Now, broadly speaking, the demographic makeup of Bridgeview Close is retirees, home workers, and people who don't choose not to work. We're pretty much wrapped up by 8, 9 o'clock at night, whereas Potons would see shift changes right up until 11 o'clock in the evening. Now, they've also produced lovely drawings and graphs showing catchment areas for cycling and walking to work. But as far as I'm aware, no employment law stipulates that you can mandate somebody to cycle or walk to work. So pretty much all that shows is that there is an ability for someone to create parking congestion elsewhere in the borough and then get a bike out of the car, ride to work for 5 miles, and then ride back again. It's simply unfeasible. It's just window dressing. Additionally, if you look at the pictures of Bridgeview Close, you'll see there's no footpaths. There's a footpath in front of the first 2 houses, and there's no footpaths going up to number 9. So there's a safety dimension here. If you're increasing the volume of traffic by up to 70%, then there's an impact there. So this committee refused on the basis of amenity last time. I think they should refuse on amenity and safety this time. Sorry about the banging.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, we have a Peter Crichton. Good evening. Okay, if you press the speak button, then you have 4 minutes, Peter. Thank you.
I'm Peter Crichton from number 9 Bridgeview Close. I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. I have 47 years experience in the passenger transport industry, in timetable, scheduling and rostering. In fact, I wrote the software that Lancashire County Council used to produce the timetable data. So I come from a point of knowing something about timetables and what have you. So it's with this knowledge that I looked at the transport note, which is used as a cornerstone for this reapplication. And it is flawed in lots of areas. Michael's pointed some out, but I do get annoyed when I start seeing data being misrepresented to produce an argument. So I went and looked at some of this data. Unfortunately, the time limits, I can only do a bit amount. So first is the bus service. The number 12 is not, and they quote in their 2.52, that it is evident this site is well served by the bus service 12, providing regular services at staff changeovers. Now, one thing they've got to do is read a timetable. It doesn't run at 30 minutes. It didn't run at 30 minutes till Stagecoach took over about 2 or 3 years ago. It went down to hourly. On the Monday to Friday timetable, it finishes at evening around 7 o'clock. And at peak times, it actually goes up from 60 plus minutes between buses, going up to a maximum of 70 minutes. So it's not the timetable that they are presented and made look like it's better than what it is. So therefore, it is not a suitable regular service for the use of their staff. And just as a point of note, because it might be then the services do get revised, and I've looked at the timetable for the new service, and it is just the same, if not worse, at peak hours. So they can't. That is one of their cornerstones within their transport note. The second is the trip generation. In table 5, it can be seen that's misleading, that they've actually presented the data in such a way that duties look like they come off at 7 o'clock and the next duties come on at 8. This is not the case. They will come on at the same time. There will be a handover period, which they have emphasised is probably 15 minutes prior and 15 minutes post duty. That means there's an area of time where there will be up to 30 minutes of double, or not double perhaps, but a number of extra cars on the close, as you can see on that map, right in the corner of the cul-de-sac, impinging on everybody within the cul-de-sac. So I graphed out the duties because I did do, and I actually did it in a report. I don't know if you've seen it, but I did quite a detailed report in response to this, with graphing out the duties. And they were claiming that there were, I think, 3 duties per maximum per day. Well, there isn't. At various times of the day, it goes up to 4, 5, 6, and up to 7. On Saturdays, they actually have 4 members of staff on, where there's only 3 members in the thing. So what's that all about? And there isn't a viable alternative for most of the day. It's only in daytime. Only the daytime shifts could possibly use it. And they claim in their document that it is 79.4, is it, % would use their own car. So that's only a negligible amount would possibly use the bus. So how they can use that as an argument. So with all that in mind, I've gone through it. Then the next thing, the council report in 10.8 states there's no difference to a normal household. What normal household has regular movements 3 times a day, some at unsocial hours, with up to 7 potential movements at shift changeovers, every single day of the year, disturbing the other residents? This does not include visits from other visitors, school college trips, hospital trips, all those things that go with it. There will be visitors, I believe, in the thing that they want, in the reports that they want people from Lancashire, so that'd be increased visitors, so increased cars, right at the end of the cul-de-sac. These are movements of a workplace, not of a normal household. So I just cannot understand how that can be seen. So just as a point, so I'll finish it with this and say the transport note is flawed. So therefore, we proved a number of areas. There are more if we wanted to look at it. So I please ask, do not accept this transport note to support their argument, and please refuse. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your representation, Peter. We have another Peter, Peter Blizzard, I think. I think I've pronounced that correctly. I'm sure you'll correct me if I haven't.
Spent a long time. I need a drink of water. Contacting.
Yeah, press the speak button, Peter.
When we contacted the council, Ben was very helpful and he said, please do not repeat what everybody's saying. So on that basis, I sought some very professional legal advice. The people I've contacted are specialist lawyers who are legal associates of the Royal Town Planning Association, because I want to come at this from a completely different angle. Consistency in decision making is absolutely crucial to maintain the confidence in the planning system. Case law is well established. There is no material difference between this proposal and the last one, as the reduction of persons from 4 to 3 still has a detrimental impact in our cul-de-sac. Too much coming and going. All that's been explained to you, and there is very detailed reports gone in. The officer report at 10.8 is misleading. It is not the head count that determines a detrimental impact. It is the change of use leading to high traffic volume in a very confined area. Again, you've had full reports on that from our 2 previous neighbours. If I have time, because I've only 4 minutes, I will come back to the officer's anomalies. This is all from legal people. It's not a personal attack. As the local plan has effectively no relevant policy, NPPF fully applies. That is dated December 2024, and several of you have mentioned it. NPPF states at para 131 that good planning creates better places to live, and it will not comply with that, i.e. it will not make it a better place to live. Also, NPPF 135A states that your decisions should ensure development will function well and add to the overall quality of the area. Again, it will not comply. NPPF 135F says development is required to create places that promote health and well-being with a high standard of amenity for existing users with community cohesion. Again, it will not comply. This is all your recent NPPF, which a few have mentioned. Members are urged to refuse this application, and there is no local plan policy that is relevant. These lawyers have looked at your plans, nor is it up to date. It does not comply with NPF, which is up to date. Using NPPF's term in para 131, this fundamentally affords protection to protect existing residents' amenities from adverse impacts from developments to the place they live, their lives. We live there. And as you've heard, it's very much going to be an impact. Some officer anomalies, namely, officers refer you to G17, but as para 1010 of the report confirms, that is about design, height, scale, orientation, density, massing, proximity and materials, not relevant here. The officer report effectively rejects there being any difference at paras 10.8 and 10.13. It is a significant change and also a volte-face compared with the officer's previous recommendation in the last report that was refused. Officer's report does not actually contain any real explanation why 3 rather than 4 would make all the difference. It is not rational analysis. At 10.38, the officer admits there is no way to control where the 3 people come from. Therefore, the county education support, which this has relied on this house for local people, has no weight attached to it. These people could come from London and the South East, as Lancashire is deemed far more cost effective. I assume my time's up. All right. I'll be 1 minute. The people coming in all have differing needs with one-to-one supervision, and we do feel for these people, but 24/7, 365. This leads to bespoke governance, health, education, transport needs, quite unlike a family home. So many coming and goings to a family home use, contrary to what you are advised at para 10.8. The applicant submits noise and transport submission, all based on generalised data. They do not grapple with the actual additional traffic movement that my fellow neighbours have come. 3 people up to 25. Possibly they could have cars.
Peter, I am going to stop you now. You've had 5 minutes.
All right.
Okay. Thanks for your representation.
Thank you.
And before I bring the ward councillor in, Catherine, did you have some comments you wish to make?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just in relation to this application. Obviously, just coming back to what the last speaker was referring to, there is a need within Lancashire for children's homes, and particularly to support children that have autism, learning difficulties and mental health needs. And the applicant in this particular case has been in dialogue with the county to understand what's needed. And whilst we can't add a planning condition to ensure that the home would be occupied by children from Lancashire, discussions to date do strongly indicate that the applicant is committed to caring for Lancashire's children. So just in relation to that issue, pardon, I didn't hear that. Oh, sorry. So just in relation to this, the main issues in terms of local residents appear to be around the impact on highway conditions and the impact on residential amenity. And as we've discussed many times in planning committee, the NPPF is quite clear about how we could look to refuse an application for planning permission based on the impact on highway conditions. And what it requires, that the impact on highway conditions would be severe. And I heard from our first speaker some discussion around trip rates and the basis for which the data have been submitted. But the trip rates arising from a use like this would not in any scenario really in this particular location be so significant to have a negative impact on the local highway network, to result in queuing or roundabouts not performing properly, which is what the basis of the transport assessment is required to look at. The applicant also has looked at the property in terms of parking provision for a children's home. And at the current time, the council standards only actually require 1 space. Now, we are moving to a position in our new local plan where 4 spaces will be required because we recognise that there may be additional demand for car parking. And in this particular case, as we saw on the photographs of this property, it is already well provisioned with car parking and additional spaces proposed. And it is located towards the end of the road, and there is sufficient space within the plot to accommodate the level of parking that's likely to be needed. And in terms of amenity, residents have expressed concerns about perhaps the level of support workers that children might need and movements to and from the site. But this property is a substantial property that's been extended. The garage has been converted. There's a lot of living accommodation there. So there is no guarantee that the actual movements to and from the property would be significantly different in the proposed use from in its use as a family home if the family home actually happened to have a number of teenagers of a similar age as is proposed here. So I think all told, officers are of the view that there wouldn't be sufficient harm to amenity or to highway safety in this particular circumstance to warrant a refusal of planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Catherine. Councillor Julia Buttery, if you'd like to.
Good evening, Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Can I just take up on the point that you made about Lancashire children mainly being coming into the care facilities? There's a lot of children who aren't from Lancashire, and that is in your report. Actually says that. There's not a lot I can say to actually. I'm sorry, I've got a bad throat. From what my other residents have said. But Bridgeview Close has no pavement at all. And the councillors, as we stand, the three of us, are completely behind the residents. I've actually been down to the area several times. I've parked my car, and if somebody's parked behind you, you can't back out. So you're going to get 3 cars, plus an off-site visiting manager, plus doctors, plus whatever else comes in. And the off-site manager is bound to visit. He's not going to stay away, is he? You're going to have maintenance people coming in for the gardens because of the size of the gardens. You've got visitors coming in. Those people that live on there, it's a quiet little cul-de-sac. It's not a main road. You've got Brownhill Lane at the top that's 60 mile an hour limit on it. Not a 30 limit, 60. And believe me, they fly down there. It's just a rat run. I just don't know what else to say. I think the 3 residents that came before have told you everything, and that really is the top and bottom of it. It should not go ahead, and I think it should be rejected. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Buttery. Right, we do have the applicant with us this evening. He's not registered. Councillor Colton, I'm really sorry, but you haven't registered to speak. You have to register to speak. Of course you do. It says so in the Constitution, Councillor Smith. Well, I'm not going to be bullied. He hasn't registered, so I'm not going to be bullied. All right? They haven't registered to speak, so I'm sorry. I'm not going to allow it. Do we have the applicant, Matt Gardner? Or Michelle McCall, or Marie Patterson, or Nikki Stadhams, all 3. Are you speaking together or separately? Pardon? What do you mean, yes? Separately or together? Together, right, okay, thank you. Okay, so if you press the red button and you can introduce yourselves and then you have 4 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Hello, thank you. My name is Nikki Stadhams. I'm Poton's Chief Operating Officer and I also sit on the Board of Directors. Poton's has been operating successfully for more than 35 years, delivering specialised support services to young people and adults with a diagnosis of autism, learning disability and mental ill health. All of our services are registered and therefore regulated with relevant professional bodies. And we believe that this demonstrates our commitment to legal, ethical and socially responsible practice. Our team worked really hard and collaboratively with LCC to bring forward this scheme. And the home as we've designed it aligns wholly with the market position statement of Lancashire that was published in December last year. As you can see from the application, it has been publicly supported by the commissioning team. Whilst appreciating the concern that the application is not materially different, it has been reduced by 25%. That reduction specifically seeks to address the concerns regarding amenity and the living standards of our neighbouring residents. Both the company and local management for this service is made up of long-standing and experienced leaders. The two founding members of the company remain in place today, and I've been with the company 29 years. We all trained as learning disability nurses, so we have a history rich in health and social care. Michelle, who's here with us today, will be the area manager for the home, and she's been with Potons for 15 years. She was the registered manager of a residential service in Preston that has a fabulous reputation in terms of delivering excellent service. She continues to enjoy fabulous neighbourhood relationships, and at the last inspection, it was rated outstanding.
Good evening, Marie Patterson, Operations Director for Portons. The assessment by LCC confirms that the scheme meets the Council's spatial separation and amenity protection requirements, ensuring no negative impact on residents' privacy or amenity. No physical changes to the property are planned, maintaining its harmony with the existing aesthetic and surrounding buildings. The Highway Authority has no objections, noting a negligible impact on highway safety and capacity. However, we are keen to alleviate any anxiety from the community. Therefore, we are prepared to undertake staggered handovers to reduce traffic during these concentrated periods. An external and crucially independent transport assessment, aligned with national and local guidelines, including the South Ribble Local Plan, outlines that there are no existing highway safety concerns with the existing access arrangements, nor are there any existing road safety issues identified within the immediate vicinity of the site, which may be exacerbated by a result of the change of use. The development is not expected to have a severe residual impact on highway or pedestrian safety in line with NPPF and policy G17, and would not prejudice highway safety, pedestrian safety, or the free flow of traffic. The independent assessment shows us that the change of use will not significantly increase vehicle trips. All vehicle movements will occur during sociable hours and therefore minimises disruption to residents. Walking and cycling are viable options for staff, with several residential areas within a 25-minute walk and others within a manageable cycling distance. The property also has a shed for bicycle storage, and Portons as an organisation promotes green initiatives like car sharing and a cycle to work scheme, which encourages discounted equipment and a salary sacrifice. Furthermore, the nearest bus stops are a 4-minute walk away with regular services across the county. The site offers car and cycle parking that meets required standards, with off-road parking for 4 vehicles. Additional parking options include one of our neighbouring services and ample parking on Chapel Lane, which is unlikely to cause highway safety issues. There is also safe parking available at the cul-de-sac exit. We feel that our proposal adds social value in terms of active citizenship and local spend in terms of recruitment, contractors and provisions, thus improving the area.
Hiya, I'll be quick. I'm Michelle McCall. I'm the area manager for Lancashire. We're aligned with Lancashire's aim to ensure the most vulnerable children and young people are protected and enjoy healthy lives. From a therapeutic perspective, the peace and well-resourced environment can play a crucial role in the healing and development of children who have faced trauma. Access to high-quality education, healthcare, extracurricular opportunities will significantly improve their chances of a brighter future. Additionally, the safety felt from a residential location can provide a stable, supportive environment where children can flourish emotionally and socially. Ultimately, this development offers the chance to enrich the community, to provide a positive future for Lancashire children, and to set an example of compassion and shared responsibility. Yeah. Thank you. We'll turn that off.
There were 3 speakers then. They're allowed 4 minutes each, so my hands are tied, really. Right, thanks for your representation. I will now open up to committee. Councillor Lomax.
For those who don't know, I worked in a children's home for 13 years in Leyland and then went on to family support. Approximately 2 years ago, in my own ward, there was a children's home opened and I was asked to oppose. I couldn't oppose it because everyone needs somewhere loving to live, and it was within the rules, so that was fine. I was told that people would never vote for me again. I would get contacted every time that there was the smallest incident within this home. So far, I have had no contact, negative whatsoever, about the children's home in my vicinity, in my ward. In fact, they fit in absolutely fine, and there's not an issue. These children have suitable placement plans. I don't have a worry about that. And again, it was a matter of parking. Again, I have had no contact with the residents about parking since then. Everyone needs somewhere to live. They've got to be placed appropriately. I think this will help any young person, and I'm happy to propose it because we need these places. So I would like to say I propose.
Okay, Councillor Lomax, so that's the proposal for approval. Councillor Williams.
Aside from whatever use this property is going to be used for, this is effectively a 4-bedroom house with an annex. So if mum, dad, 3 teenage kids who can both drive, and granny could move into this house tomorrow, if this house was on the market, there could be 4 or 5 cars within that very, very easily. All working different shifts, going out at different times, all having different visitors and things like that. And to me, for trip purposes, it is no different than a large family home, which this is. So yeah, whilst I do have sympathy with the neighbours, there is nothing to stop a large family just moving into this house. That makes it no different from whatever use it's been put to. It's either a children's home or it's a large family home, and the number of trips would just be exactly the same regardless. So as far as I'm concerned, and it's policy compliant. As Councillor Lomax states, every child needs opportunity and place to live, and I would be happy to second that, to second approval.
Okay, Councillor Williams, thank you. That's a seconder for approval. Councillor Gabbard.
Thank you, Chair. I just had the one question. Obviously, the previous application was refused before, and this one is obviously before us now for 3. Was simply the advice that the one less now makes the application acceptable, or has it been up to 4 the whole time? I couldn't.
Thank you, Councillor Gabbard. No, we feel that with the reduction in numbers of residents, that will help to reduce the impact on the amenity of nearby residents, and also potentially may also reduce the number of vehicle movements to and from the property. So I think on balance, we feel that this is now at a stage where it is appropriate to recommend an approval to members.
Okay, Councillor Gabbard, you happy with that? Okay, thanks, Catherine. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Let me just have a glass of water myself. think some of the figures and the bus services and the traffic movements are a bit disturbing, I have to say, for somebody that lives not too far away but use the road regularly almost on a daily basis. It is a very, very busy road, and certainly most of it is not safe. However, I've just been reading Lancashire County Council's market position statement that's dated December 24 with regard to requirements for children's homes, and it goes on to say what they do want, and it also goes on to say what we don't want or don't need, which is what they say. And what they don't need is any more agency children's homes opened by providers who do not prioritise providing a home for a Lancashire child. Seems there's some real conflict here, and I don't know an awful lot about these things, I have to say, but having read all the information, that there seems a great deal of conflict between the home providers and Lancashire County Council, who would like them to provide something else. And then it goes on to say 67% of children's homes in Lancashire do not care for a Lancashire child. Therefore, children, or these are adults, are coming from all over the country rather than Lancashire. I think what they do want is somebody to provide a home for children in Lancashire, and that might put a different aspect on it, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Just before I bring you in, Councillor Gabbert, I will bring you in a minute. Catherine, have you got any comments on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As the speaker mentioned, often we do perhaps receive applications that are more speculative, where there haven't been conversations between the applicants and the County Council in terms of Lancashire's need for placing its own children. And in this particular case, that it was clear the speaker indicated, and LCC have confirmed, that they have had conversations with this particular company, they've made changes to the plans and their scheme to accord with the requirements of the County Council. So basically, the discussions that have been had indicate the applicant is committed to caring for children within the county that need a home, and that is the information they're given, and therefore there's been no objection raised. Now, that's not always the position, because if we occasionally have applications for other facilities where there's been no dialogue, and at that point, we may receive comments to say there has been no dialogue, there's no commitment or indication of accepting children from the county area, and therefore that's raised as a concern. In this particular scenario, it hasn't been raised as a concern, and they're supportive of the application.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Yes, Chair. I mean, I read that out. I've been looking at it this afternoon and trying to sort of get to grips with it. And I know in lots of areas, children's homes are not popular. But what County Council are saying, I think they want some larger homes with more children in. I think that's what they've been saying here. But I may be mispresenting that. But nevertheless, I think that's where they're at. But I'm just reading the report, Chair, that's all.
I'd like Councillor Lomax was waving at me. He wanted to come in. I'm going to allow Councillor Lomax to come in, and then I can bring you back in, Catherine, okay?
With regard to larger children's homes, I can assure you it's down to smaller children's homes, certainly not large. When I started work within the children's sector, I was in a bedded unit of 23, which was hell. not only for the workers but for the children. The idea now is we have smaller homes, and the issue for Lancashire County Council is we don't have enough homes within Lancashire for our own children, and they are found out all over the country. We actually do need more homes in this area.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Lomax. Catherine, if you could come back in.
Yeah, just to conclude on this, so the exact wording is basically the home is a smaller home aimed at children with autism, learning disabilities and with mental health needs, and therefore could meet an identified gap in provision for Lancashire's children. That's the wording from the education. Yes, yeah.
Okay, so it is Lancashire children. Right, thanks, Catherine. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Some of it's a bit sort of hypothetical, I think, because you're assuming that there's going to be cars everywhere, and there could be, or there may not be. I mean, for instance, the house opposite where I live, down a very small cul-de-sac with just 4 houses, has 14 car movements a day, and that's to do with nursing and medical care and things like that. So you can't really speculate on what's going to go on there. Additionally, most new housing estates don't have payments. They have what they call service strips. That's where they put all the services. And it's a bit worried. It's pleasing that residents have concerns for the lack of payments and for the worry of the accidents from motorists that use that road, among the youth that may be using that road as well. I think if you read the Cabinet report from Lancashire County Council, you'll know that they approved the purchase of 13 of these smaller houses to use for themselves, and they go through their own planning process to do that. So coming here, you've had fortunate to have your voice and say your concerns, which means that you will be observant of what goes on and will report everything that goes on there. So I don't feel that there's enough here to refuse this application as it is. And sort of like one of the things I would like is perhaps to embrace what happens coming forward in a positive way, because if the legislation says it can happen, we have children in need who do need these smaller dwellings in nice rural areas, away from areas that could be at risk for them. So, I mean, I wouldn't be opposing this in any way whatsoever. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Smith, I'll allow you to come in once more.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just sort of trying to read this as we go along and referring to the amount of space that we need in Lancashire and the amount of homes that we need. What it says here in this report is that there are over 1,000 children from other local authorities living in Lancashire for whom the health and responsibility to complete statutory health assessments and act as a lead health professional. So there's obviously a massive problem somewhere that we've got children in Lancashire, and then others are coming in. Over 1,000, it says in this report.
But not in this particular property, according to the application. They are going to be children from Lancashire. That's what it says there in black and white.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just say?
Yes, you can come in.
Sorry.
Catherine, and then I'm going to draw a line under it. I'm going to ask if we've got any other proposals, and if we've not, we're going to go to them all. Okay.
So whilst we can't require it specifically by condition to be for children from Lancashire, the discussions that have taken place between the County Council and the applicant indicate that the applicant is committed to caring for Lancashire children, and that's really as far as we can go. Thank you.
Okay. So we've had a proposal from Councillor Lomax for approval on this application, seconded by Councillor Williams. Do I have any other proposals? No? Okay, so if we can go to the vote, please. This is for approval for 7. And the ward councillor has spoken, Councillor Colton. The ward councillor has spoken, you haven't registered. And as I've said to you, I won't be bullied on the matter. So we are now... No, I know you're not. I know you're a gentleman, I know that. But the councillor has spoken. Has she not? The councillor did register to speak, did she not? So the reason you didn't register to speak, I can't fully understand. But the ward councillor has spoken on this application. We have gone through the committee process and we are now going to go to the vote. Okay? Okay, so this is for approval. We haven't had any other proposals. We haven't had proposal for deferral or so this is for approval on Bridgeview Close at Longton.
Members have voted in favour of the application subject to conditions.
Okay, if we can move on to item number 8, which is Muuh School, Fycroft, Lostock Hall. Okay, item number 8 this evening is Muuh School, Fycroft, Lostock Hall, and we have Lisa who is going to present this item. Okay, thank you. Just hold fire a minute, Lisa, please. Councillor Coulton, are you okay? Okay. Okay, yeah, Lisa, if you'd like to present this item, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application before us now relates to the demolition of the existing school buildings and the erection of a 2-storey educational building containing rooftop PV panels, the erection of separate canopy structure to the frontage, the installation of ground source heat pumps, the provision of hard and soft landscaping, car parking, cycle parking and revised pedestrian access. The application site itself is 1.92 hectares in size and constitutes a major application, which is why it's before us at committee today. The application site, which is known as Muuh School, is more recently known as Appleby Wood Community Specialist School off Fycroft and Lostock Hall. The school site is also owned by Lancashire County Council. The existing school buildings on the site are single-storey in height and are surrounded predominantly by 2-storey residential development on all sides. The proposal would result in a new fully accessible school, sports facilities and car parking arrangements with upgraded landscaping. The new school building is proposed to accommodate up to 168 students and 77 staff. This is also in line with the existing capacity, so there's no change regarding numbers of either students or pupils, or staff rather. As part of the application submission, pupil and staff numbers remaining the same, therefore the number of vehicle movements on the site is not proposed to change. Pupils in the school range from 4 to 16 years of age, and the school offers specialist educational needs SEN provision, covering early years and secondary education levels, as well as specialist education for those with ASD and other complex needs. Existing parking on the site currently stands at 41 vehicle spaces, and whilst larger vehicle manoeuvring is possible, it is difficult, which you can see on the image before you in terms of there's not a one-way system and the car parking's accessed off different car parking courts there to the south. This is the proposed site plan, which is now before you. The proposed new car parking area will then provide 60 no car parking spaces, including 7 drop-off and pick-up bays adjacent to the main school entrance, which the school itself there you can see is being provided to the west of the existing buildings in an inverted T-shaped building, surrounded on all sides by landscaping, with the car parking there positioned to the south or Farcroft, using the existing and established access. To the east of the site there, you've got the new proposed football pitch, and to the top, you've got a proposed mugger multi-use games area. The car park has also been designed to accommodate coach, bus and special accessible student transports using a one-way system where vehicles from Farcroft would enter the site and go round in a clockwise direction. The new school building would be constructed on the position of the existing playing fields to the west, and then once the school has been constructed, the existing buildings would be demolished and the new playing field provided. The proposal allows for a variety of external areas to suit diverse pupil needs. An all-weather walking track is proposed to the northwest and northeast areas, which you can see highlighted there to the north in the slightly lighter sandy coloured area, which leads through bounds and different mounds, areas and sensory planting beds suitable for non-ambulant pupils. The remainder of the school field would be grassed or landscaped over, with the provision of a football pitch, which would be under 11 to 12 size, measuring 73 by 46 metres, with a 3 metre grass runoff zone around the perimeter of the pitch in accordance with guidelines. This size of pitch is larger than the current pitch which is provided on site at the moment. There are further grassed areas around the pitch and the wider perimeter of the site, as can be seen. The forest school area, which would be retained, and the areas of existing trees to the far northwest corner of the site would also remain. The western part of the site in policy terms is included with the existing playing field as covered by policy G7 of the local plan, green infrastructure. This designation also, however, includes some of the existing car park areas and the access roads to the west. The eastern part of the site where the existing school buildings are positioned, and further areas of car parking and hard standing as white arms within the urban area. These are the proposed elevations of the school. As you can see, it's a 2-storey building with flat roof designed and would be fully purpose-built to accommodate the proposed needs of the school and the pupils. At the moment, the school hall, as outlined in further detail in the report, there's only one school hall which is small and it doesn't allow separation. So you've got school dinners happening where they want to have PE areas and not all of the pupils can be in one room at any one time. So the new proposed building has a separate dining hall, separate hall areas and increased provision throughout. So these are just some images. You've got the PV panels on the roof there of how that could look with the additional parking. And you've got the canopy area to the frontage, just a shelter for weather there. And that on the left-hand side, you can see the forest school area. So where you've got the residential properties there to the north, you can see in the foreground there, that would be blank. So there's no windows there to any classrooms there where you've got the stairwell also. And the separation distances are adequate and comply with our standards. So that's just shown the football pitch in terms of that increasing in size from under 9 to under 10 to under 11 to under 12. So there's an increase in the size of that there. These are just some of the images going around the site where you've got the existing established access from Farcroft, views of the school building at the top right. You can see that single story, they've kind of overgrown the needs of the pupils there on the site, really. And then just some additional images. You've got corridor areas there where there's fairly insignificant storage areas within the school. So they're having to use corridor areas, which are sort of unacceptable with not enough storage and cupboard areas throughout the existing buildings. And there you've just got some of the surroundings. So on the top left there, you can see where the existing walking track is that will be replaced with more interest in there. And then the bottom images there just show some of the relationships on existing boundaries to some of the residential properties which are there at the moment. So just in terms of the report, whilst it is set out in further detail, there are a number of initial objections from Sport England which have been overcome as part of the application, with the ball strike assessment and an agreement for a 3-metre high surrounding boundary fence which has been incorporated by the applicants. There are 2 outstanding points which remain, which are detailed fully in section 10 of the report. In summary, these relate to, firstly, the quality of the pitch. The school are providing, as detailed previously and shown on the images, a much larger playing pitch, although Sport England has requested a certain drainage standard which cost in the region of £500,000 to bring that up to grade 6. And the second point, outstanding point, is the lack of a completed community use agreement incorporating the Sport England template. However, as reported, the school have agreed to sign up to a community use template, and a condition is included to provide this, which is in the committee update sheet, which you would have all received and seen, with the incorporation of the additional condition there. So, as the application has the outstanding objection from Sport England, which, although as officers has been established, we are content that the school are providing a suitable pitch, increased size, and they are willing to have a community use agreement in place, the proposal is considered appropriate. The site, however, does need to be, in accordance with policy, referred to see if the Secretary of State do wish to call in the application, which is procedural way. The design is considered appropriate within the site, and there are no other objections from any of the statutory consultees. The proposed development for the replacement of the school buildings which have outlived their useful life, the scheme will deliver a purpose-built educational facility with improved parking and internal circulation. The development will have an appropriate relationship to surrounding properties and maximises the provision of sports pitches and open space throughout the site, including allowing for community use. There's no technical objections, as we have just seen. In summary, it's recommended that the decision to grant planning permission be delegated to the Head of Planning and Enforcement in consultation with yourself, Chair, Vice Chair of Planning Committee, subject to conditions recommended in the report and on the update paper, and no objections being received from the Secretary of State. Thank you, Chair.
Well done, Lisa. Thank you very much for that. Okay, we have the agent. We don't have any registered objectors. We don't have any registered speakers. We do have the agent for the application, Lucy Ferber. Good evening.
Dear councillors, my name is Lucy Ferber. I'm the agent for the application. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As you may be aware, this application has been submitted as a result of Appleby Wood Community School being selected to benefit from the Department for Education's school rebuilding programme. This nationwide programme carries out major rebuilding and refurbishment projects, with buildings being selected based on poor condition. Appleby Wood was selected for the programme in July 2022, and almost 3 years later, we are pleased to see the development of the site coming to fruition. Originally, the school was designed to accommodate children with moderate learning difficulties, but the school now accommodates children with profound and multiple learning difficulties, including specialist non-ambulant classes. Therefore, to ensure that the school is able to continue to offer students a high-quality learning environment which caters for their increasing range of complex needs, there is a fundamental requirement for a new school building and grounds to be delivered. The proposal before you therefore seeks to secure a new 2-storey building which accommodates the children's needs and provides high-quality teaching spaces, some of which the children have previously never had access to, including brand new specific science classrooms, design and technology workshops, and food technology classrooms. It's worth noting that although the size of the building is increasing, this is not due to an increase in pupil numbers. It's because the Department for Education has a specification for class size numbers for SEND pupils. As you can see from the committee report, the planning officer has provided a robust assessment of the application. From a design perspective, the scheme before you today has undergone revisions to address comments from the officer and statutory consultees, and the project team have welcomed the close engagement we've had with the planning team at South Ribble, which has led to an improved overall design of the site. A key change has been to the proposed highway strategy. The exit to Lords Avenue has been removed after consultation with Lancashire Highways. The layout and capacity of the car park is far improved compared to the current situation, with dedicated drop-off bays, minibus parking bays, electric vehicle charging and disabled parking bays. Due to the increased car parking capacity, we're confident that the pressures on local roads during drop-off and pick-up times will be eased following the delivery of the new school. This is particularly true given that the capacity of the school is not increasing. You will note from the committee report that we've not been able to fully satisfy the consultee known as Sport England, as identified by your officer. However, the comments relate to technical matters and we are able to increase the overall size and layout of the usable playing field area. The proposed playing pitch will also now be drained, allowing it to be used across a longer period of the year. The local authority recognise these improvements that will be made to the playing pitch, and that's why they're supporting the scheme despite the consultee response from Sport England. The school community has suffered as a result of the site's poor layout and facilities. They have high maintenance costs which constantly place pressure on the school's budget. A new net zero carbon in operation building will result in high performing energy efficient building with low maintenance costs. The new facilities and site-wide landscaping will enable staff to deliver a high quality education for the children, and they're not going to be held back by inadequate teaching and breakout spaces and poor quality outdoor environments. Overall, your officer has confirmed that when considered against the local plan, the proposals accord with the plan as a whole. We now ask members to support the recommendation of your officers in approving the application without delay. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Lucy, thank you very much for your presentation. I can now open this up to committee. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the applicant's advisor. I'm not going to take up a huge amount of time with this. I had the opportunity to go down to the school and get some idea of the future plans and also the current condition of the buildings as they are at the moment, including the current parking situation. And the assurances I got from the head are that while the number of pupils being dealt with in the future will be unchanged, the facilities desperately need to change, and this appears to be a significant upgrade, bringing it forward to current standards. I fully accept that Sport England will have their reservations, that's their job, but I'm going to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Shaw. Thank you very much. Councillor Martin, then Councillor Mrs Green.
Thank you, Chair. I think my only concern, I mean, I'm supportive of this application. My only concern is I don't know when the building or the demolition is going to start, and if it's in the height of summer, there's a risk of dust and things like that, and there's a lot of residential areas, properties around the area, so there may be need for some sort of dust suppression if that's something we could ask for. My other concern is an ongoing battle with the Lancashire County Council about the asbestos that's in schools, and given that this building is of an age that it could have asbestos in it, and only the contents of the grab bag at reception will curtail that, just to make sure that residents and all people involved in that are protected from any risk from asbestos. But I'm sure that's covered under the building plan. So thank you, Chair. And I do second this. So.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. I'm pretty sure that will all be conditioned. Councillor Mrs Green.
Yeah, there was just one concern I had, which was in the report about Sport England being concerned about losing some of the sport pitch sizes and that. But having read the report, that they said that possibly the children there wouldn't need as much playing space as what they had before, and the fact that they've now agreed to allow the 2 junior football teams in the community to use the pitch, then I can't see any problems. And did Councillor Martin second it? Right, because I'm going to say otherwise I'll second it. Thank you.
Right, okay. Any more proposals? Can we move to the vote? This is for approval for Muuh School, Farcroft, Ulstock Hall. Bring it into some kind of 21st century usage. Absolutely. All right. Okay, if we can all vote now.
Members have voted in favour of the application with officer recommendation as set out in the report.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Thanks, Lucy, for your presentation. We'll move swiftly on now. Time is pressing. Does anyone want to comfort break before we move on? Anyone? Everybody okay? Okay, let's move on then to item number 9, Wellborne Farm, Marsh Lane, Longton. Debbie, this is yours.
Thank you, Chair. We're at the halfway point, nearly there. Okay, Wellborne Farm, 123 Marsh Lane in Longton is a mixed-use site, comprises a dwelling and a complex of large equestrian buildings in a linear formation running north to south from Marsh Lane. We've got aerial photographs from the 1940s that show these buildings have been in situ since at least then. On the eastern side, there is a wide driveway access into the site. I beg your pardon, I've drawn this red edge and I've missed that bit out, but that's my fault. That runs between Wellborne Farm and 121 Marsh Lane. There's deep woodland that spans the southeast site boundary. Adjacent in the west is 125, and the equestrian buildings are behind 121 to 125 Marsh Lane. 131 is beyond, and its curtilage lies adjacent to Wellborne Farm with agricultural land to the remainder of the western side. And south, there are deep tracts of open land with paddocks associated with but separate from Wellborne Farm. It's a relatively accessible location. There are pavements and a range of local facilities within easy reach. There is a narrow section of the frontage of Marsh Lane, which is in flood zone 2, a very fine sliver of land, but otherwise the site's in flood zone 1, so least likely to flood. No public rights of way and no protected trees. The site is in the green belt. Okay, this one just shows the layout of the existing equestrian buildings. They're surrounded by large areas of hard standing with the properties to the north. And the existing elevations of the buildings, as you can see, they're very large and they're in full use as livery. Just some photographs of the site itself, the buildings. Now the bottom right hand one is viewed from the site facing the open lands to the south. The others face Marsh Lane. The top right picture, you can just see the access way into Marsh Lane. So the site's completely built up and it's not visible, not readily visible from Marsh Lane itself. Okay, the proposal is for 9 dwellings and creation of a new access with demolition of the existing equestrian buildings. The new proposed access would run north to south along the western side of Wellborne Farm, adjacent to number 125. That's the attached property. Compensation for loss of the side garden for 125 has been given in the additional rear garden to that property. There are 3 proposed turning areas at mid and end points of the proposed estate road. And the existing access would be retained for numbers 121 and 123, but it's cut off, so it will be inaccessible from or to the site itself. There'll be 6 houses, 3 on the eastern side. Sorry, I beg your pardon, 9 houses, 6 on the western side, 3 on the eastern side. Sufficient amenity space and parking to adopted standards for the new and existing properties. Access into the field beyond this southern point would be restricted by condition. Lancashire County Council Highways have asked for that to avoid it becoming a cut through into the fields. They're accessible from the south, so that's not too much of an issue. And the existing hedgerow will be retained and there is a landscape condition that's been provided. We've had ecology, flood risk, ground investigation, landscape visual impact assessments and tree assessments, and we've had no objection to any of those. The 4 house types, the specific sizes are detailed in the report. All 4 are 5-bedroom and either 2-storey or 2-storey with attic accommodation. Ridge heights aren't excessive in the street scene and relate well to neighbouring properties, fairly traditional in design. The slide shows the elevations. That type A isn't easy to gauge the style, so I've put the roof plan on. It's sort of a star-shaped footprint. So this is the roof plan here. This is a photograph of the existing and proposed access. So the existing is on this left-hand side. The proposed is here, which is currently the side garden of 125. And I've put an extra slide into the presentation you will have seen, just to give you, to allay any concerns that the garden of number 125 will be unacceptably reduced. As I mentioned earlier, they're going to have some extra rear garden, and they've got a good front garden with plenty of parking. We've had comments, representation that the design of the properties is out of character with Marsh Lane. Marsh Lane is characterised by properties in a range of height, design and style, all that have evolved over time, so a really wide range. Since 2023, these properties have all been approved on Marsh Lane under the principle of limited infill in the Greenbelt, which is deemed to be appropriate development. Each has passed that test of Greenbelt compliance, and when taken as a whole, despite the various states of development, the various sizes and designs, it's actually providing an interesting street scene. It's adding to the character of the area, which is very, very mixed. So the proposal has been assessed against Greenbelt policy, well assessed, you can see that in your report, and it's considered compliant. It was a previously developed site, and in terms of openness, it's similar in layout, overall footprint. The volume's been reduced. There's a 28% reduction in footprint, and that accounts to around 800 square metres reduction. As it benefits from a Greenbelt exemption, very special circumstances don't have to be demonstrated, and it's considered appropriate in Greenbelt terms. All of the matters have been worked through and they're in the report. We've had letters of objection and support, and again, they're in your report, but we've had no statutory objection, including from Longton Parish Council, apart from United Utilities, who have drainage assets near the site. Their objection isn't so strong that they've asked us not to approve it. They've just given us conditions to control that and for the developer to be able to work with them. On that basis, we will go with approval with conditions, but delegated to the chair, the vice chair and the head of planning and enforcement until successful completion of section 106 agreement for public open space contribution. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that presentation, Debbie. Right, we don't have any members of the public wishing to speak against this application. Don't have any members of the public wishing to speak in favour of the application. We do have the agent with us this evening, Rob Rowlinson, who'd like to address committee. Hi, Rob. Your mic's already on, so you have 4 minutes. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm the appointed consultant on behalf of the applicant, H. Slinger and Sons. The proposal is for the erection of 9 dwellings, including the creation of a new access on the demolition of the existing equestrian buildings at Wellborne Farm, Marsh Lane, Longton. The development is on a brownfield site, utilising previously developed land, and the proposed housing results in an overall reduction by 28% in the floor area and over 50% in volume in the existing built development of the site, resulting in a reduction in the built environment and a greater openness to the greenbelt. Working proactively with the local planning authority during the application process, the proposal that is presented to committee members has been informed by a significant technical body of work and is well considered and a sustainable development. The development is carefully designed to provide high quality architecturally designed homes. The mix of dwelling types ensures a diverse range of homes catering to different household needs. And importantly, the proposal makes an efficient use of previously developed land, aligning with national and local planning policy objectives to support sustainable residential development. The design has been crafted to respect the character of the area, The homes have been positioned to minimise impact on neighbouring properties while enhancing the visual appeal of the site. High quality materials, including slate roofs, larch cladding and comprehensive native landscaping scheme, will contribute to an attractive and sympathetic development. The development includes a highway compliant access and parking strategy, ensuring safe and convenient transport links for future residents. The highway authorities confirmed the proposal complies with parking standards, but does not have any significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity. A new stretch of footpath along the public highway will provide a continuation of the existing footpath on Marsh Lane towards Longton, secured by way of a planning condition. The construction and occupation of these homes will bring economic benefits, including job creation during the building phase and increased local spending from new residents, including a Section 106 contribution over £13,500 towards Worthing Park playing pitch maintenance. This aligns with the broader objectives of sustainable growth in the region. The applicant fully acknowledges there have been concerns raised by the local community in respect of various matters, including but not limited to highway and residential amenity. There has been much support for the proposal as well, including good use of brownfield land and existing buildings, the increase in openness and reduction in the built environment, and reduction in noise, odour and traffic from an existing livery yard. The proposal meets key development plan policies, demonstrating compliance with residential development guidelines, design quality standards and greenbelt considerations. The application is robustly supported by a thorough planning balance assessment, which confirms that the benefits outweigh any limited impacts. In summary, this application represents a sustainable, well-designed and policy-compliant development, which will deliver much-needed housing, respect the local environment and contribute positively to the community. The applicant has fully engaged with the relevant statutory authorities and there are no objections subject to suitably worded conditions which are set out in the case officer's report to committee and has been recommended for approval. We therefore hope members will look forward to supporting this proposal by approving the application today, subject to signing of the Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Rob. Right, let's get this open to committee. Councillor Smith and then Councillor Gabbard.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is a very different application to the first application, which I did not support. Very, very different. This is a full application. You can actually see what you're getting, and I'm sure it'll do what it says on the tin. With regard to Marsh Lane, I obviously know it very well because I live not too far from there. I don't think you could spoil it any more by building more property there. It's already been absolutely ruined, I suppose, depending on your point of view and your whether you like the housing down there or not. But it's already happened, one by one, from one end to the other of Marsh Lane, almost down to the river. They've happened, and they're lovely houses and lovely property on, again, a single track road mostly, with no footpaths and nothing. But nevertheless, as I say, this is a very different application, a full application, and I do support it, Chair. And I'm assuming it doesn't say on there, is it policy compliant? It's been recommended, but well, you're nodding now, but it doesn't say so. If it's policy compliant, obviously we just don't have a say. So I will vote approval. With one criteria, the 106 agreement, Chair. The 106 agreement, we have several football pitches in the western parishes, both in Longton, New Longton and Hoole, which cannot operate because they're wet. We can't get them back into use because there's not enough funding to do it. So a request from me would be any 106 money or any planning gain that might come from this be spent in the local areas to bring these pitches back into use. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. Can we invest in a massive umbrella?
I can't promise an umbrella, but coming back on the 106 monies, the money we've requested from the developer is only for playing pitches, which in our playing pitch SPD covers borough-wide, not local pitches. We try and get them as close as we can to the sites we need to. But if we do take money from 106, it's got to be to an assigned project. We can't just take it for speculative use. We've spoken to the projects team, the estates team, who would deal with that side of things, and the only project there is one in Longton, and they've got a pot of money from development in Longton on Raynard Close to deal with that. There is no project other than Worden Park or one further away in Wantleydale that we could assign this to, so that's why it's gone to Worden Park. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Gabbard.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's policy compliant, having read the report. And I always, even though we've not got the biggest weighting, I do always like to look at the parish council as a consultee, and they've raised no objections. So I'm happy to second that we go with the officer's recommendation and associated conditions. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Gabbard. If you want to come back.
Yeah,
Councillor
just
Smith.
very quickly, Chair. We've had the project team on all the football pitches in the Western parishes, so some of them that hadn't operated for some while over a very wet winter, but they are projects somewhere on the go. So and just short of money. So if we just look at that and give it some priority, thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, if we're battling for football pitches, I know one in Penwell that needs some work, so I'll send you an email. So we're on a competition, Councillor Smith. I fully support this application. It's nice to see a scattering of different types of houses in the area. I've frequented that area quite intensely through work. I hope that, being that they are reasonably sized properties, they tend to be quite high energy usage, so it'd be nice to see if there's some environmental energy saving devices in there, such as grey water and things like that, and make it an iconic development that we can all look up to and say we were part of that. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Have we got any other proposals on this application? No. Okay, so this is for approval for the 9 properties at Wellborne Farm, Marsh Lane, Longton. If we can go to the electronic vote, please.
Members have voted in favour to approve, subject to conditions, with a decision being delegated to the Chairman, Vice Chairman and Head of Planning and Enforcement following completion of a Section 106 agreement to secure a financial contribution for the enhancement of public open space.
Okay, thanks for that, Liz. Moving on with tonight's packed agenda. Whoever has done the timetable for the last 3 months needs to give the red a wobble. Hey, I thought I might get blamed by a Conservative member somehow. But anyway, onwards and upwards. Yes, Lisa, it's you again, and I hope it's a bit quicker than the last one.
Yeah, I'll take the hint on that one, Chairman. Thank you, Chair. So this application before us, it's for the change of use of land and creation of hard standing area for parking of vehicles, new internal access, landscape and ecological enhancements and boundary treatments. There we go. So the application refers to an area of land which lies to the immediate east of the A59, the Longton bypass. And to the immediate east of the red line area is the site, which is Millers of Longton, which is an established estate of industrial and storage uses who wish to expand into the site. Site is 1.33 hectares in size, and the wider surroundings, including the site, are designated by policy G1 of the Southborough local plan, which is the green belt. The hard standing itself, as proposed, would provide for goods vehicle spaces, car parking spaces, and articulated HGV spaces, which would be laid out to enable appropriate manoeuvring and turning space within the site. So that's just showing the site boundaries and the adjoining land ownership. So you can see there the area which jolts out to the right-hand side to the east is the proposed access within the established employment area. And that's the proposed site plan. So as part of the proposals, the existing pond, which is in the centre there, outlined in blue, would be retained and enhanced and incorporated within a proposed wetland area. Existing public right-of-way, which runs north-south through the site, which you can see would be diverted within the site further to the west and away from the car parking areas. Only part of the application site within the red line would be hard serviced and used for parking. The remainder would be separated from the parking area, which you've got the hedgerow to the right-hand side, and the extended area also allows for the full requirement of 10% biodiversity net gain to be met on site through the provision of significant tree planting and enhancements to the wildlife area and the existing pond and meadow areas to be planted with wildflowers. This has been done in collaboration with GMAU, who do not object to the application. In terms of the principle of the development and grey belt, the government provided PPG guidance on grey belt on the 27th of February this year, setting out further guidance on how to make an assessment of whether land can be considered as grey belt. The NPPF defines grey belt land as land within the green belt comprising either previously developed land and or land within that in either case which does not strongly contribute to any of the purposes A, B or D in paragraph 143. In summary, the land subject of this application site would not make a strong contribution to either of these criteria and is also not covered by any of the assets listed in footnote 7 of the NPPF. The site is therefore considered to be grey belt land. In relation to car parking, the image on the screen now shows that the applicant has confirmed that there's a lack of capacity for vehicle parking and manoeuvring of the existing site and has provided robust and detailed justification to evidence this. This image before you just shows proposed layout of the area where you've got the vehicles parked, the access road with significant parking areas. The site itself has got good access to the established road network which surrounds, and it's approximately 2 miles south of Longton and 7 miles away from the centre of Preston. So these are some drone images which has been provided within the detailed transport statement, just shown how the vehicles are having to stack up and very crammed in nature within the site. Doesn't allow for vehicle movements in a timely way. And that's just another image from the opposite direction as well, providing further evidence of that. It's concluded that the development complies with the paragraph set out in the NPPF in terms of the principle, and a safe and suitable access can be achieved within the site, which is sustainably located given the nature of the businesses which it serves. The proposal is therefore considered to be acceptable in principle and is fully policy compliant. There is also no requirement to demonstrate very settled circumstances should this have been required. There's been no representations made in relation to this application, and there's also no objections from any statutory consultees. The recommendation before you is set out in the report is that authority is delegated to the head of planning and enforcement in consultation with yourself, Chair, Vice Chair of the committee, to grant permission subject to the conditions outlined in the report and the signing of a Section 106 agreement. The Section 106 agreement is to secure the long-term management and maintenance in relation to the BNG which the applicant has agreed to sign up to. Thank you, Chair. These are just some further images just showing the access in the site, and that's the footpath that goes through the site as well, and some additional images just to back up the evidence in relation to the car parking.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Lisa. Right, we don't have any members of the general public wishing to speak on this in favour or in objection. We don't have ward council wishing to speak I have a young gentleman on his feet looking like he wants to get to this table and get out of here as quick as he can. And good evening, Connor.
Good evening, Chair.
You look like you're in such a rush. I'm not even going to time you. You've got 4 minutes, okay?
I'll heed the need for speed.
Okay.
Good evening, members. My name is Conor Valley. I'm the planning agent representing Millers of Longton. Millers have operated since 1965 from this site and provide a top-class national vehicle recovery and repair service specialised in dealing with HGVs. The Millers business employs 40 local people, providing recovery and maintenance services for South Ribble and Lancashire County Council vehicles, including refuse lorries, the emergency services, plus other private companies, including BAE Systems, BT Openreach and DHL. The site is also home to other companies, including haulage firms in the agricultural sector, such as McGuinness Haulage and McGarry Transport. There are 19 firms in total on site, which benefits the local economy, and over time, the site has grown as a base for around 100 jobs. There is, however, as you've heard, a pressing need to modernise and improve facilities, including a critical lack of parking, which this proposal will deliver. Your officer has concluded that there is a demonstrated need for the proposals, and the scheme is to be sited on grey belt land, reflecting its highly enclosed nature between the A59 and the existing operational site. The submitted transport assessment shows the site is significantly over capacity for parking based on adopted standards. This much needed expansion will therefore satisfy an existing need and will not lead to an intensification of the use. As you've heard, the NPPF confirms that where development is concluded as being appropriate in the greenbelt, such as here, and where the site constitutes grey belt land, such as here, then there is no corresponding requirement that gives substantial weight to any harm to the greenbelt, including to its openness, nor, as you've also heard, a requirement to demonstrate very special circumstances are in place. Notwithstanding this, the application adopts a comprehensive landscape-led approach, including a layout which is less visible from the main road, around 220 metres of new hedgerows, 40 mature trees, new ditches, a sustainable drainage scheme, restoration of water bodies, creation of wildflower meadows and improving the existing footpath. The result is a scheme that will provide significant visual screening and ecological benefits, achieving above 10% biodiversity net gain. And on the basis of the scheme you've seen tonight, around 60% of the Red Edge site will remain undeveloped. As you've also heard, there are no technical or consultative objections. It's therefore concluded that proposals are appropriate development, comply with the policies of the development plan, and represent sustainable development, securing important socioeconomic and environmental benefits. There is no material harm arising. The benefits are significant, and the proposals also align with the Council's economic development strategy to secure economic growth and allow local businesses such as Millers and their tenants to secure the infrastructure they need in order to continue to prosper. I'd like to thank the proactive approach from officers and for the robust report. I'd like to kindly request that officers follow the recommendation to grant planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Connor. With that accent, you can have another 8 minutes if you want. I've got Peter Gabbert and Councillor Peter Gabbert and Councillor Keith Martin wanting to come in on this one straight away.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's fairly straightforward. One, policy compliance. I'm happy to propose we go with officer recommendations.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy with this. It looks all right. But I suppose my only concern would be any runoffs into the brook, which goes into Tara Car Gutter, which a lot of people might not know that. So I think if that's protected and that's all sorted, then I'll second Councillor Gabbert's proposal.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Martin. Do we have any other proposals on this application this evening? No. Okay, can we go straight? Oh, Councillor Smith, that were a bit late.
Yeah, sorry, I did have my hand up to speak earlier on, Chair, but again, I support this, but I'm surprised County Council haven't made any recommendations with the highway there. It's really, really busy, but they're in a world of their own, I think, with some of these things. But getting back to this application with regard to this particular one, you can see from the plan that the place is bursting at the seams. They've been there many, many years, as long as I can remember. They add a lot to the local economy, and this is one of the exceptions that you need to accept. It's not surrounded by houses. There's nobody really complaining about it, and I think we should all support it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay then, so are we all happy to go to the electronic vote? To vote in favour of the recommendations of the officer, and this is for approval for Wendover, Gill Lane, Longton.
Members are voting in favour of officer recommendation that authority be delegated to the head of planning and enforcement in consultation with chair, vice chair of planning committee to grant planning permission subject to the conditions below and the signing of a section 106 legal agreement to secure the long-term management and maintenance of the site to deliver biodiversity net gain.
Okay, thanks for that, Liz. Moving on to agenda item number 11 this evening, land to the south of Bannister Lane, Farrington Moss, Leyland. You forgot to put Leyland in there, it just says Farrington Moss, Lancashire. We need the Leyland. Councillors, Chris Sowerby, if you'd like to present this item, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, there's a real delay here. The application relates to a 1.7 hectare parcel of open land that's allocated as part of Major Site W under Policy C3 of the local plan. To the north is an ongoing residential development being constructed by the applicants, Keepmoat Homes, and to the south and east are residential developments constructed by Miller Homes and Tillier Homes. The site abuts Bannister Lane to the north at its end section, which amounts to a farm track in its characteristics, which is about where that arrow just about points to. I think there's another picture coming up next couple of slides that shows it in greater detail. This photo is looking south across the site with the Tillier Homes and Miller Homes developments visible. This is the view eastwards down Bannister Lane. Access is proposed from the Keepmoat development to the north with no vehicular access directly onto Bannister Lane. The proposal is for a wholly affordable development comprising of 45 dwellings with a mixture of 3 and 4 bed properties. Of the proposed dwellings, 19 would be for affordable rent and 26 would be shared ownership. Landscaping is proposed along the western boundary of the site with Flensburg Way. At the point the access road crosses Bannister Lane, bollards are proposed to prevent vehicular access onto Bannister Lane, which is a policy requirement, whilst also allowing for pedestrian access through. Across the site, the planting of 18 trees and 111 metres of hedging is proposed in addition to shrub planting. The proposal also includes the Suds Pond Basin below the line of the pylons that dissect the site. Whilst the development provides a comprehensive landscaping scheme, no on-site public open space is proposed. That is in part because our policy team have assessed there to be a surplus of amenity green space within the Ferreton West Ward, and also because the development is to be grant funded by Homes England, with there being a need to maximise the number of affordables being delivered. Consequently, the applicant is proposing to enter into a legal agreement to provide monies to the effect of £79,000 in lieu of on-site public open space, and that is for the council to spend on localised amenity green spaces and playing pitches. Interrelationships internally and with existing surrounding dwellings meet minimal spatial standards. There are no objections to the proposal from any statutory bodies consulted. For these reasons and those contained within the report, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the imposition of conditions and the completion of a legal agreement to secure the public open space monies, with the decision delegated to the head of planning, chair and vice chair of the planning committee. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Chris. The Section 106 money, still whatever you want to call it, would that be used exclusively in the local area or not?
Yeah, I mean, through you, Chair. The public open space monies are split into two criteria. One is for amenity green space, which is to be spent in the localised area, and that money has been identified for the Heatherley former play area, and as Debbie previously mentioned, for the playing pitches, that's a borough-wide. So I understand that project is Worden Park that's been identified for the playing pitches.
All right, thanks for that, Chris. Right, we don't have any members of the public wishing to speak on this in favour or in opposition. And we have Councillor Michael Green wishing to speak, who's registered on this application. Michael, I think you already know the script, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief, actually. I don't have any objection about the proposal itself. I am a bit concerned about the planning contributions, and I'm concerned about the funding going to Worden Park rather than being kept in the Farrington area. And the reference in the report, and I think Mr. Selby's also referred to it now, about there being a surplus of amenity green space within the Farrington West ward. Well, I'm just wondering if you could identify where that surplus is, because residents don't take that view. So I'm concerned about the funding moving outside the area rather than being kept for the benefit of the new residents there and the adjoining residents. With regard to any other concerns I had, and there were concerns over construction times and loss of biodiversity, etc., but I think they've been covered by conditions that you put on the application. So I don't have any concerns over the application itself, but just some clarification of where the funding is going and why it's not being retained closer to the development, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Green. I thought I'd just done that, but Councillor Chris, if you'd like to come in. I know, he's been here so long, I think he's a councillor.
Yes, the open space SPD, that allows for the amenity space element of the open space contribution, which I understand to be in the region of 17,000, I think. That can be that needs to be directed to localised areas of amenity green spaces, and as I previously said, that has been identified as going to the Heatherley area of previous. I think it was a previously play area, wasn't it? I'm not sure if there's a play area on it now. The playing pitch, that is a borough-wide contribution, and projects team have identified Worden Park for that. There is no requirement for that to be spent within a ward. In terms of the surplus, that has been identified within 800 metres of the site, and I think that's largely as a result of the immediate developments that are ongoing, and the development to the north, which is from the same applicants. As part of that proposal, there was a surplus of amenity green spaces proposed within that development, which is having a knock on in terms of the requirements and what's required in terms of the open space for this one. So it's not a case of they're not providing it, they're just not required to provide it on site, and they are still providing the monies towards it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Chris, just before I open up to committee then, just let me get this right. On this application, we've got 45 properties and 45 are affordable. Yeah?
Yes, it's a wholly affordable grant-funded
That's
development.
fine,
yeah.
thanks. Just need to get me head down. Councillor Williams, I'm opening up to committee now. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, whilst it's disappointing, there's no particular green space allocation. This site has been allocated for housing prior to I was a councillor and prior to a lot of people who were councillors. So that should have been dealt with at that particular point. But we are where we are. There are over 3,000 people waiting for affordable houses in this area, and this is 45 towards it. 45 is only a small amount, but it's a start. And the sooner we get these built and people allocated into them, the better. So I'm quite happy to approve.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Lomax.
No need to say anything apart from I second. You're quite correct, sir.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Lomax. Councillor Mrs. Green.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's just 2 points in the report. It mentions there's in Farrington West, there's already green spaces 800 metres away, and you mentioned Heatherley, but they haven't got anything on Heatherley. There's nothing, no green open spaces for children to play or playground in that area of Croston Road whatsoever. So I don't know what's happened with it, but, you know, surely with the development of this size, it should go in that local area, really. That's one point. And also the affordable, I believe it's part of it's social rent and part of it's shared ownership, isn't it? Am I correct or am I not? Yeah, so I don't know if you can clarify about this green spaces in Farrington West, 800 metres away. Where will that be? I'm not aware of any in that area, and it's an area that really, really needs. Unless they go up to St Paul's at Farrington, there's no more play areas. There's nothing on Croston Road for children. You know, there's the estate. I call it the Pylon Estate. There's no play areas there. There's no play areas at Etherley. There's nothing. Don't know if you can help me on that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There is different types of public open space. The surplus that's been identified is amenity green space, which is like a visual type of public open space. It's not an active area of public open space. It's more of an area that's you look out onto, it's greenery, it's planted, it's nice to look at. I understand that the surplus in that is as a result of the development that is ongoing to the north. So it is consented, it's what's going to be built out. It might not necessarily be there now, but as the development to the north of Bannister Lane comes forward. Can I just go back to the slides? Sorry, I'll just put this.
Feel free as late.
That's the one. So part, I need to bring the pointer on here actually. Here we go. So this development that goes all the way up to the tank roundabout, that's delivering, I think it's around 450 dwellings. That development includes a significant area of amenity green space, which results in there being a surplus within the immediate ward. That's not to say that the application before us is a concrete jungle. I mean, you can see from the plans there are still significant areas of landscaping throughout the site. You've also got the area beneath the Suds Pond, which is planted up, and that's in addition to 111 metres of hedging and the trees that are planted. So it's not a concrete jungle. It's not categorised as contributing to the public open space. No. Yeah, I think there are discussions going on separately with the projects area of the council, and I know Councillor Karen Walton's been heavily involved with that in terms of bringing forward an area of play, hopefully in very close proximity to this site through the council.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Sowerby. It's Chris.
Oh,
Oh, dear me. So thanks, Chris. It's Councillor Green getting me all confused here. Anyway, it's late, isn't it? Do we have any other proposals on this application apart from approval? No. Okay. So if we can go to the electronic vote, please. This is for approval. Land to the south of Bannister Lane.
Members are voted in favour of the recommendation that authority is delegated to the head of planning and enforcement in conjunction with the chair, vice chair of planning committee to grant planning permission subject to the following conditions and the signing of a section 106 agreement to secure a financial contribution towards off-site public open space.
Great, thanks for that, Liz. Right, moving swiftly on now to agenda item number 112. This is Runshaw College, Langdale Road, Leyland, and Fiona, it's you again. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a major application for a new science building at Runshaw College following demolition of an existing building which is no longer fit for purpose. So the proposed site is 140 metres from Langdale Road, behind existing college buildings and trees at the rear of the college. Access would remain as existing from Langdale Road, as you can see as indicated on the image in front of you. This shows you what's existing there now. So the building on the right and the central connecting atrium is to be demolished, with the rectangular building on the left there to remain. During all works, staff and students will be accommodated elsewhere in existing buildings on the campus, and there's no proposed changes to staff and student numbers as a result of the proposed development. So the proposed two-storey flat-roofed building would have a smaller footprint than the existing building to be replaced, but will be between 3 to 4 metres higher. So this shows you the existing and proposed car parking areas, and that the smaller footprint of the building allows for a new car parking layout and an increase of 11 parking spaces overall when including the parking area at the bottom. And there would also be an additional external amenity areas for students and wider footpath around the building to help with safety around that area. And there will also be some screening with that car parking areas to protect students from any vehicles. This just shows you some photographs of the existing site and the building that will be demolished, just from all different sides, at the side and the rear. Just again, some more photos there of the car parking area that exists on the right. And you can see on the bottom left, there's a cycle storage area that would remain as part of the development. There'd be no change to that. You can see there at the bottom, there's two pictures showing you that central atrium just as you go in from the rear or in from the front. That's what will be taken down as well to leave two distinct buildings at this location. So just some elevation drawings of the building. So the new science building would have grey and green aluminium panels with decal images of science atoms throughout, with it being a science building, and there'd be entrances on 3 sides of the building but none at the rear. So just continuing there with some more images of the elevations. The one there with the large glazed entrance is facing the car park area, and the one at the bottom there would face that existing building, that rectangular building that's not going to be demolished. And then just some floor plans to show you what's going to be inside of the buildings. There's going to be 11 science laboratories altogether, 5 labs on the ground floor, 6 labs on the first floor, with staff and student areas, preparation areas, toilet and lift facilities, and a plant room at the front there that you can see at the top of the image that's actually there now, so that would remain as existing and the new building would incorporate it. There's the first floor plan. There's also going to be photovoltaic panels on the roof and air source heat pumps to help with it becoming a sustainable development, as outlined in detail in section 10 of the report. There's a proposed visual of the building. help bring it to life. There's been no objections from statutory consultees, and the scheme would lead to more than the minimum 10% net gain in biodiversity, as detailed in section 10 of the report. There's only one representation received in support of the application, but just making some comments with regards to construction hours, which will be controlled by condition. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the imposition of conditions as listed in section 13 of the report. Thank you.
Oh. Thanks for your presentation, Fiona. Adam? And I have to remain impartial at all times, Debbie. Right, I have Councillor Gabbett and Councillor Mrs Green wanting to come in. So, Councillor Gabbett.
Thank you, Chair. Yet again, another agenda item, this policy compliance, and I do work in a testing laboratory, so I'm happy to propose that we have some more in an educational setting, so happy to propose officer recommendations, Chair.
Thanks for that, Councillor Gabbett. Councillor Mrs Green.
Yeah, Chair. I mean, the facilities, extra facilities for the students look absolutely great. You know, I'm all for that, for help the young people and the college. And this building is right at the back of the college. It's not overlooking any houses or anything. It's not bothering anybody. So I'd like to second for approval, please.
Okay, do we have any other proposals? Okay, we've done well tonight. It's not 9:30 yet. So, okay, so this is for approval for the fantastic application at Runshaw College in Wellborne. Absolutely awesome, this application, love it. Can we go to the vote, please, for approval?
Members have voted in favour of officer recommendation, subject to conditions.
Brilliant, thanks. Brilliant, thanks very much, Liz. Thank you all very, very much for your patience this evening. It has been a long one. Don't forget, next month we're at the LFA. Okay, so we're not here for planning committee. Next month we're at the LFA, but don't tell the applicants that. Councillor Smith.
I understand why it was going there, obviously because of elections, but apparently they're all taking place at the tennis centre and not here. I just wonder why we're going to somewhere else.
I don't know, but that would be for Democratic Services, not myself. Okay. All right, thanks very much, everyone. Have a safe journey home.